everyone, to day number 3 of SWC. We're about to kick off a lot of these games, but before that, I have to say, those cosplays are still blowing me away. I'm excited. I'm hosting that one tomorrow, which means I get to not only reveal, I guess, the winners, but also see more cosplays, which is always great for me. I'm excited for that one. Also, I think it's worth noting that these games, I mean, so much weight right now. It is the one and done, lose and go home. I think a lot of pressure on these teams, especially a team like Mind the Gap that got here through a double elimination tournament. I'm going to be sitting on the desk and helping to break this one down with the assistance of Aggro, which is going to help me a whole ton because you, especially for this one, I feel like mid laners are drastically important. I feel like the junglers are going to be drastically important. And since that's your home base, it's a really good place for you to be able to give the input on that 3v3 and how it's going to work.
I think it's going to be so much fun to watch. You're right to highlight these mid laners because Krim in particular for this Mind the Gap team, I am really, really high on. This is a guy who was an absolute superstar on the console side of things, came over to PC and has really continued that growth since coming onto the PC side. He's played on a lot of different teams, a lot of different players, and basically everybody who's teamed with him comes away saying the same thing, that they're really impressed with how this guy prepares and how this guy plays the game. And he's going to need to be that impressive today if he wants to take on Dardes, who is without a doubt one of the best mid laners, if not just straight up players in the entire SPL.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the best pivot. SSG as a team, you look at them. I mean, longest win streak that we had throughout the SPL. They're one of the teams that had only games in the 80s. They had 89 games played throughout the entire year, which is similar to E United and Obey, except it's for the other reason. Instead of getting 0-2'd a lot, they were 2-0ing pretty much everybody that they were up against the field with. And you had just mentioned not only Dardes, but like the hi-rez, your Persephones, even your Chalangas. Like, there's so many things to ban against this guy. I mean, where do you want to go to try and take care of him? Do you have to focus all those bans onto Dardes?
I really don't think you can, and that's what makes this team so difficult to play against, is that they have a lot of really, really strong comfort picks that you have to take care of. Maybe one ban per phase. I think something like Morrigan, which we saw him play a lot at near Phase 2 playoffs time, something like Chang'e, those sorts of harder to deal with picks. At some point, you have to just say, Dardes is getting Hera, and we have to beat it. And that's what makes this team really difficult, because you can't give Cherry his priority picks. You can't give Nika or Vote or Raffer their priority picks. You have to be able to cover your bases when it comes to this team in picks and bans. And I think that if Mind the Gap can come in with a good pick and ban phase, it's the best thing they can do to up their chances of winning today.
That was the awkward thing. I was writing down all of the gods that I was worried about, and I went Erlang, Amma, Jingwei, Rama, Hera, Ganesh, King Arthur. So like the list just kept going. I'm like, geez, they're just frightening to play against, and that's something Mind the Gap are going to have to do with. And I actually think we have layers standing by from Mind the Gap. One of the teams, and well, I guess now the team that has to have the task of trying to take them down. Layers, welcome. And I just want to know, going into this, first and foremost, how are you feeling? On Twitter, after wildcards, it seems like everything's been feeling good, but how are you feeling today before the games?
We're all really, really excited to play. We're feeling pretty confident, honestly. We have really nothing to lose in this set, so we're hoping to maybe turn some heads.
Layers, I know that you've been trying to get to this level for a long time. Playing at PC Worlds now has got to be a huge achievement for you, but it's not like you can sit here and rest on your laurels now because you got Cherio on the other side. Yeah. What impresses you the most about Cherry's game?
Really everything. I think he's just a dynamic player. He's definitely a playmaker, and when that team is successful, it's because of Cherio. I think if Cherio is not successful, then that team doesn't really look the same. So it's going to be definitely a hard mountain to climb. Sure.
And a big task for you. I mean, in the jungle, I was looking at it and kind of thinking back to a lot of the picks you played during the wild card, and you and Cherry were going to be fighting over, I think, a lot of those. Is that maybe how your team's looking to tackle this, or are your eyes kind of elsewhere in the map? I mean, having to deal with Nika and Dardes as well, it's not necessarily an easy task.
Yeah, their whole team is just obviously stacked. They're a great team, so we definitely have to come in with a game plan. We have a game plan for it, so hopefully we came with prep, so we're going to stick to our guns and see what we can do.
Well, I'm excited to see. I'm sure everybody is at this point. Good luck in your games, man. Thanks for your time, and hopefully things go well for you. Mind the Gap, the team right now that is going to have, again, a very large task ahead of them. Taking down Spacestation Gaming was the hardest thing for Pro League teams. The only team that did it consistently was Ghost for a while there, and they're coming in as your 1 seed, and you're coming in with this team that they lost to Spreed most of the time in the SOC. They lost to Spreed once during the wildcards. It was the double elim portion that really kept them alive there, that they got to push back into the finals. You don't have that cushion anymore. Do you think that weighs on you a little bit more now?
I think it does, but just from that short interview with Layers, it makes me feel a little bit better about how they're going to be tackling this, because he's right. They don't have a lot to lose. The percentage of people expecting Mind the Gap to win is probably in the single digits, and for good reason. Spacestation Gaming has been the second best team in the SPL all year long. I know their seeding coming into SWC is seed number 3, and that's because they underperformed at those playoff events. But make no mistake about it, this Spacestation Gaming team is absolutely a top 2 team in my mind. I think that if Mind the Gap come in and play loose, the worst thing you can do here is start to feel pressure that you're putting on yourself. There shouldn't be any pressure on Mind the Gap. It's Spacestation Gaming that has to come out and prove that they are going to play up to the level that we normally expect from them.
I mean, they are the team that at this point, and Mind the Gap, that are kind of dictating the pace of this, right? Because like you said, not SWC, that's where we are. SSG, the other acronym that starts with an S, is the team that, like I said in the interviews, they had bad scrims coming into both playoffs, and that felt, at least to what Nika had said, detrimental to them as opposed to helpful. And so now it is that question of, if you have that same mindset, how is it going to work? I think we actually have Cheerio standing by to see how he's feeling going forward to this one, if he's going to be there for the interview. Hey, Cheerio, as you come through, I just want to know, how's SSG feeling? I mean, your favorite in this matchup. Are there some nerves?
I don't think there's any nerves. I think we have a lot of time to like warm up if we are to go to the finals. So we're taking this as like a really good game to see where we stand. Like, are the things we planned, are they good or not? Can we adapt on the spot? And they're really good teams, and they have nothing to lose. Like Leia said, like they're gonna come out just doing absolutely everything to try and take us down. So we just need to be ready for it.
Jerry, during those team interviews we had a little bit ago, Nika was saying that he felt like your team's scrim culture wasn't great coming into the 2 playoff events, and that was one of the reasons why you didn't perform up to your expectations there. Talk to me about the last few weeks of scrims leading up to this event. Have they been a little bit better?
Better than the last 2 playoffs, yes. Ideal, not really. Like, it is better, I guess. Get a look at the positives. We're just not a scrim team. Like, we're never going to be a scrim team, so we just have to hope that all the things we learned throughout the year, especially in SPL games where we definitely learned the most, playoffs as well, we can all like apply this to the games we're going to play this whole week.
Yeah, and you guys, I mean, you had the longest win streak in the SPL. I think it started like right after a loss to Ghost, and the only reason it was ended was a loss to Ghost, right? It was so many weeks that you guys went undefeated. But do you think that kind of, maybe, I don't even want to say went to your head, did that give you enough experience to feel confident for today? Or do you think that you're still having to approach it like Mind the Gap as a team that can beat you, you have to take it every single one game at a time?
Definitely going 100% serious. We're not going to hide anything. We're not going to, oh, let's not save this for this team. We are just bringing our A game. We're going to do our best to win. We're not going to hold it back. We're just going to try to get a clean win, make sure, like, if we do have any strats, we try not to show anything. And yeah, we're just going to focus on just playing our best, respect them as a team, expect them to not make misplays, expect them to do the right plays, and just try to win as if we're playing against Ghost, pretty much.
Awesome, man. It sounds like you guys are prepared to tackle this one. Good luck in your games. Go get ready, get prepped up, and we'll see you as you start playing. Thanks so much once again. And Aggro, I mean, I think it has to be said, no good answer ever starts with a deep sigh like that. I mean, that was, I felt that from here.
Okay. For Cherio's defense, I feel like every sentence he says kind of starts with a deep sigh at some point. Like I was saying during the pregame show, this dude cares at a level that is unmatched in the SPL, and he really stresses about things like that. So to hear Cherry say it was better, that's good enough for me to have confidence. If you're rooting for SSG at home, don't feel like that means that, oh no, they had bad scrims leading up to this. I don't know if Cherry could feel like they were good scrims. That's just not how the man's brain works. And it's what makes him great is that he's always feeling like there's a lot to improve on. I think SSG, it sounds to me from that very short soundbite, is in a good mindset coming in, understanding this Mind the Gap team is one they cannot afford to take lightly. And I think they're going to end up performing here.
Yeah, I would actually, I think, agree with that on the side that if you're coming into this, especially as a team that has been pretty much at the top the entire year. I mean, you were first in the SBL for weeks and weeks at a time, and you're stressed about this, that's good news, right? Like, you don't want to take it lightly. You don't want to end up going in and slipping up. And we know there's already going to be a lot of contested picks. The Erlong specifically is what comes to my mind, something we've seen Layers perform exceptionally well with, and something Cheerio got a pentakill on, and then I think the next week got a quadra-kill, and the next week got a quadra-kill. Like, people had to start banning it, which is what opens up Dart as. It's just so difficult. I think this picks and bans dance is going to be maybe the most important for these two teams.
I mean, this SSG team is one that wants to start grouping up and fighting as a team. We often see them play the early games a little bit slow, get to the 15, 16, 17-minute mark, and then hit the Jets better than just about anybody. They really flip that switch effectively. Mind the Gap is a team that they've been playing in the NA SOC during this phase. Not even the SCC, the SOC, the open circuit. So I think they really need to bring that down and dirty NA ranked style. I mean, I'm talking they should be watching the Armada rival VOD from a couple years ago. And Krim locks in Erlong mid with double Chalice a la Meerkat. I'm feeling better about their chances. I just don't think Mind the Gap can come in today and expect to win a game of straight up SPL level Smite, because Spacestation Gaming is better than that, better than everybody at that exact same style, save for maybe Ghost and Radiance and teams that have done it to them at those playoffs. Mind the Gap should be going invade compositions. They should be invading early. The more kills, the better for Mind the Gap. The less strategy, the better. You know, this isn't a team that's incapable of strategizing a Smite game. I'm not saying they aren't intelligent players. I'm saying that that's Space Station's specialty, and to play into that would be a mistake. I want to see Mind the Gap treat this like a ranked game, run it down as hard as you can, and if you can pull Space Station down into the mud with you and get them over-rotating, missing waves, taking bad fights for no reason just because there's numbers there, that's the perfect scenario for Mind the Gap. You've got to beat them in your own style, not try and match Space Station at their style.
I mean, you kind of highlighted it, but you highlight aggressive play. The first thing I start thinking of is, oh, Ghost Gaming. Guess who beat SSG the most consistently? Ghost Gaming when it came down to it. Raffer, on the other side, though, like you had said, does not care if he has to be patient early on. I mean, we locked in the Ganesh, and when we did a Grandmaster's class about it, he just straight up said, yeah, if you're like under level 5, you just suck. You're not playing well. Like, you don't have anything going for you. You are just hoping to survive until you can get that ult online and start making rotations to mid. And he loves playing it. It doesn't, like, he acknowledges that first 5 minutes or so of gameplay is not his favorite, but he loves playing the Khepris, your Ganeshes, the more support-oriented style. And it was really awkward because it came out in a meta of Hercules and Sobek, and he's still the only one who is doing it, and it's just been a dynamic shift. Do you think we're going to see him have to switch up his play?
I don't, and I don't think Space Station should switch up their play. They've been able to handle, look, I'm not speaking some sort of crazy theory that Space Station, you want to take them on early rather than late. Teams have been trying to do that to them all year long. They're really good at bending but not breaking, so I don't think Space Station should change their play style. I think Mind the Gap should turn it up to 11 on the aggressive meter, go past the point of sanity that other SPL teams aren't willing to go. Things like Warriors in mid lane. I'm for here from Mind the Gap, honestly.
Well, they have been doing their homework, whether it's for them or for Cherio specifically, that Erlong is going to get the first one taken off. And I'm just going to go back because I have the rosters here and look at what you had said during the pregame show, which was that Wolves and Griff, you know, kind of sandwiching the 3v3 in mid, are the two players, at least on the side lanes, that have to show up. You had said you expect Layers, Krim, even Quig to a certain extent to show up and be consistent. It's whether or not Wolves and Griff can really hold their own in those lanes.
And those guys have tons of competitive experience. I'm not worried about them letting the moment get to them or anything like that. I don't think that's the concern. It's that when we've seen, let's say Griff, for example, when we saw him take on Snoopy last year at those wild cards, he played with far too much respect. You can't just assume that, oh my, you know, I'm in lane against Vote. Vote beats the best hunters in the world. He is one of the best hunters in the world. I've got to play back. I've got to play a little bit more respectfully. That's the worst thing you can do because you're going to get them to the point where then you can't do anything. They push leads better than other players. I think that I want to make sure that Griff and Wolves are going in with that same aggressiveness, that same confidence that they normally would if they were against someone they perceived as worse than them. That's the mindset you got to have.
And they're going to be able to come through. Again, a lot of homework being done. Set, Ra are the bands alongside that Persephone for SSG. Nothing really bad over there, although they get the Yamoja, so I think they're more than happy with this duo lane they've locked in. But the Cupid alongside the Aphrodite, that's the one. It was going to be Hera or Afro for me. But that Afro for the longest time had a 100% win rate for SSG. They opt to take that one off. They grab the Guan Yu, the Discordia, and they're looking for their third one now as they lock in the On Her. But you give up Yamoja Rom. The scales, I don't know which way they're shifting, but it feels pretty heavy on the SSG side.
Yeah, I was saying that Mind the Gap needs to have a really good pick and ban phase, and so far I'm not in love with it because even though Dardez's Afro is the best Afro in the league, it feels completely unbeatable. It feels literally unfair because in my mind it is what Aphrodite can do, especially in someone like Dardez's hands. I think you'd almost want Dardez to pick Aphrodite because that's the sort of thing that you can abuse in the early game.
Yeah.
If your game plan is to win by 24 minutes and you consider any gameplay after 25 minutes a loss, then Aphrodite is fine on the other team, right? You should be okay giving that up. It feels like Mind the Gap is going to play as if this is someone like Spree that they played against in the SOC in the wild card finals. I don't think that they're really giving SSG the respect that they deserve when it comes to if you let them get to late, we are almost certainly toast.
What's insane to me, and now I'm looking at it, Yamoja, Rom, the Morrigan now locked in there for SSG, a lot of scary things. But when I'm looking at the bans for Mind the Gap, like you said, even though Afro maybe is something you can deal with, all four of those so far, they're still waiting on their fifth. They feel right? Like you don't want to deal with the Erlong or the Robin. You don't want to deal with the Cupid, but now you have to deal with the Rom. You don't want to deal with the Afro, but now you have to deal with the Morrigan. Like it feels like, again, and this is what we were saying earlier, it's just a team that's so difficult to lock down because you have 3 or 4 signature gods in literally every role, but solo laners are the ones that take the last hit there. The Nike taken away. The Amaterasu was very kind to Nika for a long portion, although she's been nerfed since then. King Arthur was very nice overall. So, I mean, there's a lot of options over there. And of course, it looks like they might go for the Cerberus. He's been kind of skyrocketing these last 2 days.
I mean, healers are good. Cerberus is good against healers. Seems pretty good to me, as well as a lot of compositions are going less magical damage these days. If you can add a Cerberus in there, it bumps up your magic damage numbers quite a bit.
Now, I did not call Fenrir. I did not think I was going to see a Fenrir. It was not in my mind. I see Cerberus. I'm like, cool. What junglers are we going to go through? Wheelish has been popular. So many to go down the list. What does Fenrir bring to this one? I mean, I'm looking at on her Discordia. I don't necessarily see a lot of synergy as much as it is that Fenrir is just good, I guess, blanket assassin.
Early game, and I think it's going to be support here for Quig, it would be my guess. I think that's the way that you should play it here if you're Mind the Gap. Cucullin coming in means that I think it's going to be Cucullin solo, Guan Yu jungle, Fenrir support would be my guess, just based on Layer's history of playing Guan in the jungle, and then Wolves' history of really loving this Cucullin. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. I mean, you look at this roster for Mind the Gap, I was criticizing it a little bit for not going early enough, but if you look at it in the sense of you've got 2 warriors, an assassin in the support role, and then Onher, who's an early game hunter, and then Discordia, who's going to boost that early game damage number through her passive. Mind the Gap have come in with a cohesive draft in the sense that they're trying to get aggressive early on. This is not a draft that scales well into the late game. This is not a draft that can go late and really match that of SSG's draft. And that's what's good. I think that that's a good thing about it. You don't want to come in with this balanced sort of composition against a team like SSG. Turn it up to 11. Get aggressive early. And I think Mind the Gap have drafted tools to do that.
It was everything you wanted to see in the draft. Well, almost everything you wanted to see in the draft that can come through. And when I'm looking at it, I mean, first off, very physical heavy, so that's always something that can kind of hurt later on. But it feels, like you said, like we're either going to beat you in 20 minutes or we're going to lose in 30. Either way, it's going to be fine. And I guess that is worth noting. I wrote it down thinking it was a meme game for them, but SSG does have the fastest loss in the SBL. The E United there is 17 minutes. And if Mind the Gap can follow similar to, I guess, the other teams we've seen, they could theoretically try to win it.
This is the way I look at it, Gore. The difference between a Mind the Gap loss in 25 minutes and a Mind the Gap loss in 45 minutes is literal 0 to me.
Yeah.
Because once you get to that point, especially with a draft like this, it doesn't really matter. So don't worry about trying to make it close. You know, oh, we had a Fire Giant fight where we were down 8K, but we almost killed 2 of them. That doesn't get you anywhere. You know what I mean? You have to make your wins happen pre-15 with this composition. And viewers at home, you guys should be tracking the gold lead, the experience lead, all those things through the first 15 minutes. And if Mind the Gap don't have a lead by 15 minutes, don't have a lead by 20 minutes, their win percentage numbers go down not just because of this draft that they have, but because of the play style that SSG has. It's not impossible, but it becomes much less likely as the game goes later.
But getting aggressive, like looking at the roles and at least what's been locked in, you know, your Mojas, your Roms, that are coming through, like that lane seems like it's going to be hard just because of the healing that's over there. Is that where you want to put your pressure, or are you trying to focus on like Morrigan on Cerberus, although Cerberus is a Guardian? Like, it just feels like there's not a lot of easy options to really shut down here.
It's a good point, but Yamoja Rom has such good wave clear that a lot of times they're going to be pushed up really far in the lane, makes it pretty easy to gank. Juan's level 2 gank is actually pretty good because the slow on this 2 is really strong, and then the Prot Tread helps you out in that department. Fenrir for Quig, I'm expecting, should really be focusing on Vote in this game. Yamoja Riptide is going to mess up your Brutalize. Morgan Stealth messes up your Brutalize. Cerberus has a jump. Nemesis is a fairly good matchup for you, but otherwise, I'm expecting SSG to gun it down in the duo lane, and that's where Griff playing up and confident is going to be even more important, because I think duo lane is the easiest route in order to beat SSG with this style of draft. I think that Quig and Layer should be spending a lot of time over in duo.
It's almost weird to say this, but that on her, as much as it's going to be good for Mind the Gap, also feels like a shot at Dardes in my mind, just because that's where we see it often if it's played for SSG. And I feel like it's not something Rom has had to match up against often this year. I mean, we've seen a lot of Cupids over there. We've seen Jing Wei's. On her has been that kind of flex pick occasionally picked up for some of these teams. So do you think, like, in that matchup directly, once the supports get on out of there, whether or not he has a lead, is that something you can win, or does Rom's attack stem really just make that difficult?
Yeah, Rom is really hard to box, man, especially a guy like Vote who is so down to fight. And if this were like 2018, I'd be really worried for Vote, because his job is not to kill Griff in this lane. It's not to get pressure in this lane. It's not to get ahead. It's to just live and let the rest of your composition do the work. 2018 Vote, I'd be like, Liam, please just don't die, man. Like, do not push up. You don't need to. But Vote's really matured as a player. I think he's one of the best LAN players we have, and that doesn't really get talked about enough. His career KDA at LAN is actually unbelievable. He really steps up in these big moments. I think that this is going to be tough to punish him in particular, but maybe, you know, he gets a little overconfident. Playing against an SOC team, maybe he feels like he can just make it work.
Hey, this ain't your 2018 vote. This is your 2021 vote, your 2021 SSG. We have to see what they have going into this one. The drafts are locked in. The teams are ready. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to the casters to take this one away.
Another great job there on the desk. Gore and aggro. Finch and Mifflin here as we move into this critical game. The last hope for SCC is Mind the Gap. Will SSG do what they always do and dominate their opponent? Mifflin, do you like what they said here on the desk? Does Mind the Gap have to get ahead early, or is this one a lost effort?
Mind the Gap is on one of the most intense timers I think I've ever seen, Finch. They have got, aggro said 15 minutes, I might say 10. They are on a timer here. They don't scale well into the late game, but their early game is incredibly strong. Keep your eyes on Layers. I think he's going to get involved very early.
Well, look at these relics. Double blink from Wolves and Layers. Sunder from Quig. That is aggression if I've seen it. Meanwhile, Spacestation are not going to be caught unawares. 5 sets of purification beads. Whatever it is Mind the Gap are bringing, SSG are going to be ready for it. This is going to be such an important one. We know how strong this SSG team is, right? I mean, I think that they have a chance to win Worlds cleanly. But they have also been known to maybe underperform at LAN. Up against this unpredictable Mind the Gap team, maybe they could get caught unawares.
Yeah, that's the only way I see it going the way of Mind the Gap, is if they catch him with their pants down here. Mind the Gap is a team that is so centric on early aggression. That's been these Box Boys' plan since the box, truly, the SWC, or SCL rather. But I think Mind the Gap have got some very interesting tools here. Quig on this Fenrir is going to be a huge center of power, a fulcrum for them to get them into that mid to late game. I think we might expect to see Quig rotate out of that duo lane very early on, because he's not going to have a ton of kill potential into a double beats Rom and Yamoja. So you got to go somewhere where you can get that ball rolling. And Morrigan, that's a pretty easy target.
Another area I think is going to be a big emphasis here is the solo lane. Nika, about as good as they come in the solo lane. Him and Fine OK, I think, trade the baton between 1 and 2 all the time. And they give Wolves an aggression pick into this Cerberus. I think that's huge for him. Using that Kakolan transformation to maybe get a little bit of pressure, get a bit ahead in that lane, could be really big for Mind the Gap.
And this is a pick that Wolves has a lot of history on. He's played on the world stage with this pick more times than I could count. I think he has the potential to bully out Nika throughout the early game, but Nika's one of the best solo laners in the SPL, isn't he? Once we get to level 5, level 6, I think we're going to see that lane stabilize a little bit. And as we get into the double-digit levels, I think Nika's going to start controlling it.
I think there's a really good chance as in goes Quig. Vote is the early target, but a nice roll from Vote lets him hold onto the BET is A-OK. I'm pretty well documented not being a big Cerberus fan, but I think I might be wrong as Griff jumps in. Vote is low, but does survive, and so patient with those purification beads, Aggro. I don't know what kind of pressure you need to make Bode use them, but it hasn't happened yet.
You know, I was worried about Griff coming into this land because he's shown a lot of respect for these SPL hunters in the past. Recently, he played against Barracuda. He was playing very passively. When I saw him match up against Zapman, he was showing a lot of respect there as well. And I think we really need Griff to have this aggressive mindset if they want to make this composition work. So seeing him jump in on tower line, love to see it.
Oh, but look at this. Dardes is rotating in. This could be a 3v2 in favor of SSG, and Quig, the early target, but a good use of the leap gets him away. But Dardes is level 5. That means Quig is in a whole world of hurt. Gets dragged back in by his own ultimate and is in an awful position. Roll in from boat, and SSG find first blood easy as you like.
Man, Dardes so smart on that rotation. Mind the gap, doing what they were trying to do with the composition. We got pressure in lane. We got to go somewhere. Let's try to invade a purple, but Spacestation, they're used to it. They play against Ghost Gaming.
Yeah.
They know how to deal with this aggression.
Doesn't that feel so bad? Quig can't even do that yet, and yet it gets done to him over there, Dardes, stealing the ult and absolutely making that one work. But that gets set up because you were able to see where some of the other pressure from Mind the Gap was on the map. But here's Layers looking for some revenge, rolling in on Boat, who doesn't have the ultimate yet. Easy kill for him, and maybe even a chance to lock down Rapper, who's already had to use the purification beads, and now he's been slowed to all heck. He is in trouble, and Griff is able to find the second kill of this game. Now Mind the Gap are bouncing back.
And that's why we keep our eyes on this Layers kid, man. He's playing aggressive. He's making plays. He's trying his best to do whatever he can to put these lanes ahead. Now, Griff should have a slight lead in this lane. The support should bounce back as well. Quig is only a speed bump falling early.
Wow.
He should be able to tick over to level 5 very soon. And the 3v3 for Mind the Gap inside the mid lane is so strong.
Terrio spent a little bit of time over there in solo helping out Nika, probably because Wolves had a bit of pressure over there. And that's starting to help Layers in a really tangible way. He's already level 6. Cheerio still doesn't have the ultimate yet. A lot of the times with Nemesis, you like having Blink on her as well, but because of the nature of this Mind the Gap draft, they locked down on that purification bead, so it might be a little tougher than we thought for Cheerio to keep up with Layers in the early.
Well, I don't even think that's the plan for him, really.
Can't
SSG
be, right?
is just waiting it out. Penta beads lineup. Yeah, we'll wait till the 25-minute mark when we just have a untenable advantage inside these team fights. I think Space Station, the fact that they were even able to get first blood for themselves is very indicative of just their veteranship inside the league.
And just how good Dardes is, right? I mean, obviously he's a mechanical monster. You're not going to see this guy make a mistake, but it's as you talked about, that heads-up awareness to make that rotation over. We know that you got pressure in duo. You're looking for the purple buff to fade, and instead of like every single ranked game I'm in where they leave me alone, they come over to help. But Quig has found the ultimate. It's Rapper who's in some trouble. No ultimate yet, but Quig not able to put much pressure out. Even knowing Rapper's beads were down, couldn't get much out of it.
Unfortunate situation. Now Quig losing so much of that kill potential and the ability to burn beads off of someone else. Rapper gets a ton of value just eating up that ultimate. I want to see Mind the Gap keep up this pressure, man. It's a little bit slower than I like. 800 gold, 5 minutes in. They need to be pushing this point of the match where they're in the advantage. They got to push it a lot harder than I'm seeing now.
And I know you were saying that you want Quig to maybe rotate out of duo. Is Dardes the target of that aggression? Where do you want to see Mind the Gap go?
Dardes for sure, man. If this Morgan makes it to late game and she's turning into a late game Cerberus or even a Cullen, you're going to lose all opportunity to kill her. You want to get onto this Morgan before she's allowed to get that second relic available, a couple items under her belt. Right now, the Morgan is effectively just a weaker standard mage. She doesn't have that one-shot potential that you associate with this god just yet. You want to exploit her while she's weak.
Oh, both of these supports staying in dual lane a little longer than we're accustomed to, huh? Quig and Rapper hanging out. And I wonder if that's because of the pressure nature of Mind the Gap. You heard him saying on the desk, maybe spend some more time there, and that has been the case. And it has kept this dual lane a little bit more stable for both of these teams. Is a little bit of a stun over the wall, won't amount to much. Mind the Gap make it out of there. Is this how you want to see him? You want to see Rapper maybe spending more time over here to mitigate the fit?
Yeah, I think Rapper just has to stick wherever Quig is, as Wolves in a little bit of trouble, forced into the ultimate.
No, this is no good. Terrio's rotation is huge, but Wolves gets cut off by Dardes. How is he always in the perfect position? It just doesn't make sense. He's thinking 10 minutes into the future.
Yeah, Dardes is out of his mind right now. Everywhere you need him to be, he's already there. He's letting you know, I'm on my way. Look, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to ping it. Just corral him to me, and it's working out perfectly for him. And a Morgan finding 2 assists in the early game, getting that itemization online so quickly is going to be so detrimental to Mind the Gap.
Quig rotating in top side, perhaps looking for some aggression, but Boat and Rapper spot that one out. So Quig goes into the Brutalize, doesn't find much on that left side of the map. So they'll just fall back, but man, Dardes is already having the kind of performance that SSG is going to need from him. this team's looking locked in. We were talked about how maybe they're a bit inconsistent at LAN, but if this team has hopes of going far, and they should, they're one of the very best teams we have, and they're going to need to stay as locked in as we're seeing them right now.
I wouldn't even say the word hopes, right? It's expectations.
Yeah,
I mean, if you keep track of Rapper, he's saying, this is my last year in the SPL. I want to go home with a ring, right? This is a guy who wants to prove himself. He's been around since day one, and the rest of SSG, these guys are a family, truthfully. You keep up with them, they love each other, and they want to find the win.
Layers making a little bit of a gank and respond to what Cheerio did a moment ago, but Nika positioned perfectly for it, able to fall back to the tier 1. No harm, no foul. And I think you make a great point there of going to exit on a win. Rapper's done this several times before. Bring these guys together, form a strong unit. Did it with Epsilon, eventually Energy, right? Did it even back before that, back near season 1 or so. And this is the kind of guy that is able to get the right guys around him, is able to get the maximum potential out of his team. You may not always see it 100% on the battleground, but Rapper's value to these squads is huge as Crimson has been caught out already. Cheerio the only one nearby, though. But it sounds like they forced out the apple.
Yeah, the apple's gone. Crimson still moving forward, though. A rotation from Wolves is going on a Cherry.
Yeah, they got the beads out from him, too. That means Quig should be able to gobble him up. Cheerio pulled back in, but he gets the shield. The stuns are there.
Nice
Nemoja
hold.
proves valuable, but they end up trading Quig pulls for Cheerio. And so far, that seems worth, and Dardes still wants a bit more, turning into the Guan Yu, but Wolves proves elusive, able to escape. Looks for the Stygian and Torment, does Nika, but can't grab anyone. And now Layers with a chance to turn it around, dash in on the Nika, and he gets the kill before his life is traded.
But Dardes the entire time goes undead, right? 2 kills onto the Morgan. I think that's value for SSG every single day of the week. This Morgan is getting these items under her belt so quickly, and so far no pressure has been put onto Dardes.
You gotta love these jungle builds, though, right? SCS and Jotun's Wrath. You love the old school starts in these guys. That's exactly what they're going with here. But this tells you the way that Cheerio's planning to play. If he's gonna be going sort of this basic attack-focused nemesis, as opposed to sometimes we see a bit more ability-based, where you want to blow him up with slice and dice, then it's gonna be a little while before Cheerio's quite as impactful as Layers. And you could tell, because Dardes turned into Layers, right? So it's a great point for this Guan Yu right now. Is Quig leaping in. They want to lock down Cheerio, just as I said, but the shield allows him to stay, but blue buff invaded.
Mind the gap, keeping that ever-present aggression on the map. And I think you're right to highlight that Cherry's build is going to be very slow. We could still see him move into the Crusher or something along those lines to kind of bridge the gap into the late game. But I don't think he needs to at this point. If you take a peek at the gold, we were saying we need to see a huge lead for Mind the Gap. At Agro's estimate, 15 minutes, Mind 10. I don't think we see it just yet. This is less than 1,000.
Votes are getting aggressive on the on-her. Well, Griff is and I guess that's the reason. Very low behind the tier 1, but shouldn't be able to chase it out. Though Vote still has that ultimate. If you are low against a ROM, you're basically as good as dead.
Especially against Vote. This man doesn't miss his shots. But look at this brawl over in the soul lane. This is what I wanted to see. A lot of people have been worried that Wolves wouldn't be able to compete at the top level, especially against Nika, right? One of the best players we've got in the league. But so far, he's holding his own incredibly well. He's been finding pressure constantly.
I do think he got a bit of a favor in this matchup, so maybe I'm not so willing to say I'm wrong just yet, but you're exactly right. He's looking great here, almost calling so far. But it's kind of, as you all said, sooner or later, Mind the Gap have got to step on the gas, put a brick on it, right? Because they need to get way ahead. Dardes is going to be on Morgan in the late game. He'll be able to blow you up as a mage and then turn into Guan Yu or Cerberus or whatever, and you won't have a hope in the world. So this has got to accelerate for this Mind the Gap team.
If Mind the Gap isn't killing a Fire Giant by the 20-minute mark, I'm going to write Game 1 off as an SSG win almost immediately. The pace that they're setting right now isn't reflective of their comp. They need to be exactly where Layers is right now, deep in the enemy jungle, try and catch someone out.
And they have looked for that aggression, right? But I think we got to give some credit to SSG for playing it well, as Quig and Layers are waiting to spring a trap, but there's more SSG members here than they thought. Cheerio is immediately dropping the ultimate on the Layers, and now the aggression is there. Layers must pull away for safety, but Dardes is chasing. My horse is a little bit better, so they already got 1 kill, but maybe they can cut down Wolves as well. Dash through for the slow, and Cheerio there to follow up. Nika gets 2, and Mifflin, oh no, I'm worried already. SSG now on top.
Man, Cherry just springs the trap in reverse. The Uno reverse card gets dropped in the midst. Mind the Gap, they thought they had it, but they do strip away the beads from Nemesis, and Dardes, in a little bit of trouble in mid, loses out on both relics in exchange for the apple.
So he should be vulnerable. I mean, if Quig and Layers are not there, then that's a misplay from Mind the Gap. They got to get to this Dardes guy because he's vulnerable now. But this is such a good start from SSG, and this is to my point. It's not so much that Mind the Gap aren't even looking for aggression, they are. It's just that they've had the answer on Space Station, all 5 purification bees, their rotations are on point. And even with Quig invading the red buff, it just feels like a little bit too little.
And just to speak to that one small engagement there, who's expecting 4 members of SSG to turn the corner on a back camp, right? That feels like a pretty safe invade if you're Mind the Gap. Unfortunately, though, SSG are just a little bit too heads up on it. And take a peek at the pace that SSG is establishing for themselves. If Mind the Gap are looking for constant aggression, SSG is farming up passively and just kind of wax on this Mind the Gap roster, just keeping them at bay. And in about 8 minutes, I think SSG is going to be one hitting the gas pedal.
Yeah, right now SSG are passing the vibe check, but later on, they're going to be hitting the gas. They are just building up and waiting for their time. And more than waiting, they are answering the questions that Mind the Gap are answering. Are you going to be there for our dive into Cheerio up in the jungle? Yes, we'll be there. What about when we invade purple at the beginning of the game? Well, don't worry, Dardes is there. So far, they have had all the answers, like they got the test before they actually gave the exam. They seem to know exactly where they need to be, and SSG looking for them.
And Wolves now starting to struggle a little bit, about a level and a half down on Nika off of that engagement on the right-hand side of the map. That was a silver lining for Mind the Gap, having that pressure coming out from over there, but now Space Station almost done with that solo side tower. That's going to be a huge shift in map pressure once we start thinking about the Pyromancer.
And things will be open, it'll be less safe over there. It's just not a great look. Let's do a bit of a roundup on where these builds are at this point in the game. Looks like a sledge gonna be coming later for Layers, but maybe I gotta wait. Quig and Griff are on the Fury. Rapper knows though, so probably gonna have to drop it, and that is the case. Quig ends up low, and SSG deter them from the objective. But I like that Mind the Gap at least gave it a try, just that SSG were ready.
Is that allowed, Finch? Is Rapper allowed to deal 50% of Quig's HP bar from max range as a support? A little bit of a brawl over here. Griff playing with fire, as you already highlighted. If Boat gets in that ult range, it's going to be free.
Wolves in trouble again. Cheerio has had pressure in the solo lane. Stygian Torment collects Wolves and delivers him back to Cheerio's waiting arms. Big ultimate from him, though, creates some space. Leap in from Nika does get juked, but Wolves has the blink, but so does both of SSG, and he gets melted. Well done on the right-hand side, and on the left, Mind the Gap with their 4v2, and looks like a 4v3 advantage, aren't able to do anything.
Yeah, Raffer locked eyes with 3 members of Mind the Gap and pushed them back with just the force of will that he's got. He said this Gold Fury isn't going down. Mind the Gap not able to do anything with that time, with Space Station putting so much pressure on the solo side of the map. It's slowly slipping out of their hands, isn't it? Now Space Station, the ones with the gold lead.
Yeah, this is going to be tough for Mind the Gap in this position. Already down over 1,000 gold, closer to 2K at 1,900 experience. Even worse, 2,300 or so favoring SSG. And maybe Mind the Gap can compete in the late, right? I mean, you do still have the score. You can be a fine late-game mage, Kakullen as well, but on her Fenrir, doesn't it feel as though they might be hitting their cap here at some point? They're going to need a little bit more than this, and SSG are just waiting for him at every turn. Look, Quig just minding his business, and 3 members of SSG are there waiting.
And Quig has not been allowed to do anything on this Fenrir pick at any point this game. Constantly, he walks in, tries to find a gank. 3 members of SSG just holding a baseball bat, staring him down, daring him to try. And this 4-fizz comp from Mind the Gap, the later the game goes, the easier it's going to be to counter. But we get to take another peek at Cheerio's build now that we've got a slight breather here. And it is going to be a very slow build, isn't it? Kinsize coming out in that 3rd slot. But it's going to be able to burn through so many of these frontline bruisers that Mind the Gap are bringing.
I love this from SSG. It's just complete awareness of what Mind the Gap are going to do. It's like, okay, they look for early pressure. We've countered that. Let's build as greedily as we want for late, because they just can't compete. And that's exactly what they're in position to do with the way they've started with these build paths so far. And as I was saying with Mind the Gap, they are building some items to try and make it so they can fight now, like the Onis and the Sledge and the Odysseus bow coming out from Griff. But SSG have had the answer at every turn. I just don't think it's going to be enough.
They have, but Mind the Gap do have a slight advantage inside of that ADC build. If a team fight does erupt around the Gold Fury, that Odysseus bow might be the difference maker. There's going to be just about no AoE damage coming out from Boat as of yet. Instead of going for that more standard Odysseus bow into Kinsize, he goes for the Atalantas into Kinsize. His single target, incredibly strong, but in a team fight, he should be slightly weaker than the On-Her.
It feels like SSG are confidently ready to win any 1v1. Cheerio and Vote would be hard to deal with at this point in the game. And if Dardas can get his ult off, then I don't know. Good luck dealing with whatever he chooses to turn into. Nika, not a bad transformation target for him right now at this point in the game, so that might be where he goes. It's just been a bit slower now, hasn't it, for a bit? Right around that 11 or so mark, when they look for that play up near those back harpies, kind of near the blue buff, and Mind the Gap got stuffed. We haven't seen much from them since then. It's almost like they're not so sure where to go.
I mean, where do you go? You're going to go in the level 17 Morgan? Are you going to try and kill the Yamoja that has bees? There's not very many good targets at this point. And this is exactly what aggro is worried about on the desk. The more strategy we see in this game, the more it's going to favor SSG. And to me, this is looking like a chess match.
It is, and right now they're Queen's gambiting them. I haven't seen it. Is that
It's good.
correct?
It's a good
usage?
show.
There we go. Okay, all right, nailed that one. So it feels like they're just ahead. And listen, Mind the Gap are a strong team, but SST have been fighting the best of the best for a calendar year up until this point and getting better and better every time. They've been setting the meta at times as well. It's been this SSG team at times with a bar that everyone else is comparing themselves to. It's just going to be an uphill battle for this SCC team. And they're the last hope, right? They already lost Beltsap on the other side. This is the last remaining team to carry the flag for the SCC and SOC.
But if you look at the player cams, even though this game has gone just about as awry as it could have, the strategy that Mind the Gap clearly brought into game 1 has not worked out. These guys are honed in. We were talking about hunger earlier on.
Right.
If anyone's got hunger in this entire tournament, it's going to be Mind the Gap. They want to prove themselves on the world stage on PC. And you know what? I think they can, man. They just have to get something to work out for them ever so slightly in the early.
Oh, you think we're just console kids, huh? Can't compete on keyboard and mouse, huh? Well, that's Mind the Gap team is here to try and prove as many people wrong as they can. And I think even if they're not able to find a victory today, I think clearly the performance from this team has been admirable, right? And they might be on some kind of short list, at least some of these players, to see what they might do in the future as part of the PC. And we'll get our chance to evaluate all of that once we're past January and start looking more towards the future. But right in the here and now, Mind the Gap are closer than maybe a little bit before, only about 1,700 separating them, but they're going to need more. We passed your check mark 8 minutes ago. We passed Agro's 3 minutes ago, 4 now. Mind the Gap have got to prove both of those benchmarks wrong if they want to win this one.
It's going to be a very tall task. Those slow builds of SSG are just about done at this point, and it might be an Executioner coming through for Cherio for additional penetration to deal with these frontline tanks. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous how quickly they're going to be able to burn through Mind the Gap inside these team fights. What's worse than Cherio running at you? It's 2 of them, and Dardez almost certainly going to turn into him.
Well, I want to talk about Executioner a bit, because there was a while where that item felt dumpster tier, didn't it, where no one was building it, but I've seen it prop up here and there now, even maybe occasionally in some Hunter builds. When do you look to slot that in?
You look to slot it in when you're jungling. That's really the only way it is. I think it was Sino who first brought it into the league as Mind the Gap pulling the gold for you, but Raffer zooms on over. Yeah, best of luck, boys. You tried it once. It didn't work the first time. It's not going to work the second time either. Spacestation are privy.
I think they need to plant their flag myth. Spacestation aren't going to mess up. They're not going to not come to a Gold Fury and not defend it. You know, you're going to have to, if you're Mind the Gap, get in there, force some relics, force some cooldowns, and plant your flag, because SSG are not going to make a mistake and give you an opening.
Yeah, it's very trepidatious, isn't it, from Mind the Gap? It's almost the exact opposite of their normal playstyle. Usually it's a devil may care attitude where they just go in. But it's SSG going in here, isn't it? There's a big group from them.
5 members of Mind the Gap are already here, and they're burning the Gold Fury quick. This is a big battle that they must win. Mind the Gap get the objective, and it looks like they're still battling on the back end. No, they're trying to retreat, but a Riptide Perfect Wolves manages to slip his way through, but Spacestation are hunting for a punish on the back end. Myth, that's a great play, but I don't know, I'd argue 6 minutes late.
I'd argue 10 minutes late, right? I mean, what is that, 200 gold in the lead, if even, for Mind the Gap, and now Space Station have complete control of the map. Look how aggressively they're positioning. They could go straight to Pyro or Fire and force Mind the Gap to follow them in.
SSG are saying you can have the Gold Fury, but we know that in the late, we are heavily favored. Cheerio starting up Pyromancer and shredding it. That build's doing work for him right now. No one from Mind the Gap will move into the Pyro. Belong to the Chaos side team this time around. I thought that Gold Fury fight might be critical if they were a bit more on the back end of it, but just the Fury itself, not going to be enough at this point for Mind the Gap. They got to be ready for a Fire Giant battle.
And that Fire Giant battle is looming on the horizon. And we're 22 minutes in. We're approaching full build on some of these guys. Dart is looking at solo. That's all he's doing. If he hits someone, they're going to die. Doom Orb, Divine Ruin, Soul Reaver immediately turn into literally anyone else just for one more ability. Someone's going to die on the side of Mind the Gap. Dardez has been allowed to free farm for way too long.
You're exactly right. I mean, you said 11 minutes ago that you can't let Dardez get to this exact point freely, and that's exactly what he's done. Almost no pressure on the relics all game. He's ulting to chase you down, not to escape like we often see from Morrigan's 3-0-3. He's having himself a game almost close to those soul laners in damage. It's Nika and Wolves edging him out a bit, but a big drop-off after that as it's Yomoja next up. So you can tell Dardez has already done work.
But even just take a peek at the damage output. It's SSG on top all the way. That's not what you'd expect to see from a Guan Yu, Fenrir, On Her, Kakullen in the early game. It's been very slow going for Mind the Gap, and it's just because they haven't been able to find a place to dig in their heels, to find that aggression. That Gold Fury was a good look at it, but this is not an objective team. Getting a Gold Fury running away is not what Mind the Gap are looking for.
Is Mind the Gap going to win from this position, Myth? As far as I'm concerned, they're going to have to delete Dardas. He cannot transform in a fight, or I think it's an L for them. That's the only way from this position they can do it, and who's the person that can blow him up quickly here at this point? If it's anyone, as it looks like SSG are going to invade the red buff. They do it successfully, not much contest.
Quig's a little bit far up in mid, but nice pillar start. Let's go, Griff. Big ult and layers surging forward.
Absolutely. One time he was Griffin Slaves, and he's done it here today with an excellent pillar. And the Desert Fury follow-up. Now Quig has grabbed Raffer, pull him in. The shred is there from layers. Mind the Gap don't seem to care what we say here on the desk. They can still fight 23 minutes in.
Space Station caught asleep at the wheel, and they pay the price for it. 2 dead for 40 seconds. You want to wait till late game to fight? Sure. Mind the Gap say you're just dead for longer, but what are they able to do? Take a tier 1? It's going to need more.
Nika now the next one in some trouble. He does end up using Stitching and Torment. That collects 2, brings them into the tower aggro. Mid-tier 1 goes down, and Mind the Gap are positioned to take the tier 2 as well, but Dardas is healthy. Dardas has the resources, but he doesn't move in just yet. And the tier 2 getting lower and lower. Mind the Gap completely subverting my expectations and taking it to SSG in the late.
But they still have a little bit of time to work with as well. They're trying to move into that right side jungle, but Space Station a little bit too healthy. Fire Giant not easy enough to clear. Mind the Gap, man. I didn't expect to see it at all. I was ready to write it off. I said it earlier. 20 minutes in, if Space Station has a lead, they should have been able to win every single team fight. Unfortunately, though, Raffer just a little bit too deep in the jungle, and it all crumbles.
And what a play from Griff, man. I mean, as long as this guy's been playing, he's been a bit of a role player for this team, hasn't he? I mean, it's usually Crimson or Baronic when they were high unit, or Wolves or Lair making the big plays. Even Bobby, back when he was there inbound, was a big part of that team. But Griff stepping up and essentially soloing Raffer on the biggest stage he's ever been on. I mean, that's big time, man. That's Griffin Slays if I've ever seen it.
And it's good to see these guys are primed and ready for land. Some players, they crumble when they've got this many people, this many eyes on them, and it seems like Griff, only empowered by it, SSG are able to move in, get the defensive positioning around the Fire Giant. They've got the ward advantage as well. Despite losing out on that fight, despite not having the map pressure, SSG still willing to keep it in there.
They've got 3 sentry wards over there by the Fire. One, I love where it's positioned kind of near that entrance from middle lane. That's going to get a lot of info for them. One on the Fire Giant proper, and another in what I'm going to call the steel corner from now on, right behind the Fire Giant pit, where we saw a ROM arrow steal through the wall yesterday. You want to know what's going on there, and SSG do.
Yeah, I guess maybe SSG a little bit scared after watching that game. Don't want to get it stolen over the corner as Quig in a similar position as Raffer, but luckily has a couple jumps.
Raffer, right?
Yeah, he makes it out of there alive this time around, but 10 seconds left on this Fury respawn. Mind the Gap are there first, but Space Station are there in numbers.
They are, so Mind the Gap are going to pull off some more heroics. I know Griff made a big play, but it ain't rinse and repeat for that. You know, they're going to find some other miraculous way to get another big fight off if they want to close this one out. And this is what we meant. Not so much that it's impossible, it's just that every minute that passed on, you're adding more and more weight. It gets harder and harder to do it.
Yeah, you got to play near perfect with Mind the Gap's draft at this point. Maybe better than perfect, plus ultra, if you will, around this gold period. They need to win this fight handily. I mean, CC from Griff is nice, but it's not reliable, as you already highlighted. Quig hasn't got a single Ragnarok ultimate that has resulted in a kill yet. The support has been largely mitigated by SSG's draft. We need to see something line up. I want to see Quig disrupting the back line. I want layers on top of Dardas from minute 0 onward. We just haven't quite seen it just yet.
I wonder if they're going to start looking at Nika. Look at this build. It's not the tankiest Sir build we've ever seen. I like it, though. He's going to be the level. Plenty of damage from that solo lane. Mind the Gap are going to watch out. I think Nika's coming to swing, not so much to be the tank.
Yeah, that Stone of Binding, the Void Stone, the Spear Magus. He's a little bit squishy at this point, honestly. And with the 4 physical coming through, I think Mind the Gap might be able to shred through him if they don't die first, right? That's a ton of damage coming through from the Cerberus. But again, it's a very patient playstyle from both teams around this Gold Fury. We saw the immediate grouping as soon as it spawned, but finally Space Station say, all right, well, no one's here. We might as well pull it.
I like that they're pulling this, but Quig's looping around the back. He's a little far forward on his own. I don't know that I like it. He gets blown up instantly, just too far ahead of the team on that one, Quig. But the rest of the squad is here to help out. Cheerio got that one first. But in the back, Nika looking for the Stygian Storm and cannot find it. And Layers looking for the collapse. Maybe they can burn Nika, but not faster than Wolves is getting shredded in the back. He has to retreat. Dardez comes in as the Guan Yu, gets the stun onto Layers, and Wolves providing what assistance he can, but suddenly the walls are collapsing. Boats gets 1 kill out of the Mind the Gap solo laner, and just like that, it's a 2 for 0.
SSG, they've got the entire map free for them to roam. Do they want Gold Fury? Sure, take it. They can go to Fire Giant as well because of the sustain from Yamoja. Rapper going to go back to base, likely mid his team over there. 40 seconds left on Wolves. It's going to be a long time till they have a good frontliner. And Quig, man, in there way too early, huh? He just goes in on his own and immediately gets blown up. I might be a little early to call, but I think maybe put Fenrir on the shelf.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the difference in the SCC and the SPL, right? I mean, I don't think Quig's timing is bad in a vacuum, right? As they're starting Gold Free, you look around behind, but you got to make sure the whole team's on that same page, or there's no way to work. And then after that, Mind the Gap were just in pieces, weren't they? Spread out throughout the fight. Wolves is getting melted everywhere he goes. Layers is as well. Just a struggle for them. If they can't start the fight on the same page, this team fight kind of collapses.
I think it comes down to Nika. He created infinite space. He goes immediately onto Crimson, and then 3 members of Mind the Gap are forced to peel back or lose their mid laner. And then, even then, Nika makes it out alive with this squishy build. It's ridiculous.
Quig trying to start up this Fire Giant, it looks. He gets aggressive with the Brutalize, and the rest of the squad is here except for Wolves. So this is a bit risky for Mind the Gap, but just kind of testing SSG's response time here. My old buddy Tom would say, throwing a rock through the window to see how fast security responds. That one was quick. Maybe it just you just wait if you're Mind the Gap.
I think they do. They need to play counter now. They can't be the ones starting the Fire Giant. They can't be the ones starting the Pyromancer. They need to wait for SSG to make a mistake. And you said it earlier, SSG probably not going to make a mistake.
They got their one with Rapper, right?
That's
it. Not going to see a whole lot more from this SSG squad. Now, the goal difference, especially if it's this low at about 1,000, means almost nothing. The biggest difference now is going to be in these compositions and what relics are available and how you're forcing out these cooldowns. Layer still has about half a minute on those beads, a little less than that for Crimson on his shell. No Aegis for him. I think perhaps expecting Cheerio to be his biggest problem, so has that upgraded shell to keep him safe.
Makes sense, but so far it really hasn't been Cheerio, has it? It's been Nika every single step of the way with that huge damage in his build. Maybe that Aegis would have been a little bit more useful than a shell, but look out for the team. Aegis is just for you. Shell's for everyone. You want to share a little bit inside of these engagements. So far, we're keeping up this patient playstyle. It seems like SSG are of the same mind as Mind the Gap. They're waiting for a mistake to come through, and occasionally they've been able to find here or there. Maybe Quig steps up a little bit too far. Maybe Raffer does the same for the side of Mind the Gap. It's been a very slow game, surprisingly.
Yeah, look how Wolves, Vote rather, has finished out his build. That's a Mantle of Discord as that final item. We've seen this a little bit more from Hunters, where maybe they're trying to get some defense in there, but SSG don't care how much defense you have. They're starting up the FG, already have it to a little over half HP, and Mind the Gap are still entirely out of the pit. But SSG reset it, they drop it for now. Very little poke starting that up.
Both teams have the benefit of sustain in their draft. Guan Yu for Mind the Gap, Yamoja for SSG. So these elongated fights shouldn't necessarily favor one team or the other, but if I had to give the edge, it's obviously going to go to SSG because Yamoja healing comes from auto attack. She's healing you literally all the time.
Yep.
Guan Yu's only got that first ability going his way. So I think Spacestation are going to be in the right if they just drag these fights out as long as possible. Look for poke constantly. They've got the tools to do it, be it through Rom from a range or even the Morrigan using that Dark Omen from a range as well. Mind the Gap, on the other hand, don't have nearly as much ranged poke. It's all engaged from them.
You know, when I'm laning with the Yamoja, I hate when she's autoing the wave. Auto me, man. Give me some of that healing, you know? I'm a greedy. Let me auto the wave. That's my job. You keep me healed up. Maybe a little too selfish on that. Need the assist. But here in the late game, you know where those autos are going. Raffer keeping the squad healed. And still, the pace remains slow. But I'll admit, this is a little bit better than I thought they'd look at the 31-minute mark, right? I mean, around the 23-minute mark, I thought this might have been over. But Mind the Gap have hung around. If they can execute perfectly and maybe be online with Quig's engaged, they might have a shot.
Look, Mind the Gap wins one team fight, one. Count them, one, and they win it cleanly. That's the game. They've already got a bird exposed, and that's why SSG is playing so safe. They know, oh, if 3 of us die, 4 of us die, and we don't get anything in return, we're just going to lose here. Mind the Gap have done such a good job of establishing a win condition through that center of the map.
Raffer, now some of these builds out, has the Urchin and the Spirit Road for him. Magai's cloak there for Dardez. a little bit of that extra CC immunity. A little bit of that frost there for Cherio with the Void Shield, but he's mostly getting aggressive here on this. As the mid tier 1 tower goes down, SSG group up and take care of that one. Just grabbing what structures they can. This is patient. And you said on the desk, I think, a little bit that SSG are okay playing this pace. We see them do it sometimes, where they'll play a little bit slowly and trust their late game team fights. They gotta make sure they're careful to mind the gap. Can find one member a little bit on their own, and now they got the 5v4. They might close this game out.
They absolutely can. Both teams playing incredibly trepidatious. But look at the ward coverage around the Fire Giant. It's favoring SSG holistically, but it seems like the next fight, the only thing that either of these teams have been confident fighting over in the neutral are these Furies. SSG, first ones on the scene, mind the gap, spread throughout the map.
Well, this is the Oni Fury. That's actually a pretty big deal here in the late game, and Quig does not have much backup. Got the Mad Guy's cloak from Dardes, but they cannot defend the Oni. And now the pressure is on for Mind the Gap. That's exactly what SSG needed to break this stalemate.
Call it the Sanguine Special. The second Mind the Gap show any presence anywhere on the map trying to deal with these Oni minion waves, Space Station is going to start up the Fire Giant. They're already grouping up on the right side. They know what they want. And again, Mind the Gap, nowhere to be seen.
This ain't even about the Oni wave. This is just SSG realizing Mind the Gap aren't here. They start burning the FG. And so Wolves has to come in alone. He's got to be careful. Blink in, but it's not that low. Wolves is early and has to jump back out. Gets caught by the sun. The Fire Giant now well below half, but the Cavalry has arrived. Mind the Gap are here, and this is just shaky enough that maybe they can win it. Quig goes on and he can force out the beads. In comes the Apple of Discord, but that finds nothing. And Layers is being brought lower and lower. Fire Giant below 6k as well, but Layers took too much poke. So has Wolves. They have to retreat, and now SSG can start running in.
Dardes turns into the Guan Yu and finds the kill into Crimson. SSG surging forward.
Yeah, they recognize this is their chance. Nika putting out the damage we talked about earlier. As Mind the Gap are low, but can contest. Myth, I know they're low, but have they done enough? Can SSG do it with Dardes that low here at this point? Nika low too?
Hey, if you forgot about the Emoja Finch, that healing's going to come through at any point. But Dardes goes back to base anyway. SSG win the fight cleanly. But instead, they're going to go back, use this time. They still have 30 seconds left on this Discordia respawn, so there is absolutely no rush at this point. They can work with whatever they need to. And Mind the Gap, they show that they're still capable of fighting. Those were thin margins that SSG won by.
Yeah, I think those were. I think if they could just get a little bit more information about the FG, that's why that vision control is so important. It kind of forced Wolves' hand, didn't it? He didn't know exactly where the health was. He had to blink in right away, and that little bit of out of sync with their engage hurt him there. But I like this back from SSG. They still have a 5v4 for a little while as they start up this objective. Dardes comes in and puts great poke in already. Layers is low, but has the heal. Quig moves in next, gets hit by the Nemesis ultimate, but does drag one member out. But now he's stuck in the pit, and the damage is coming. Quig in trouble, and Vote able to find the very first kill.
Layers now low as well. Rom in the air, and he's able to find it. Double for Vote.
Yeah, not bad here from Vote in PK. That Drillborn killer he used to go by, and he's showing it here. Grip in trouble, and Vote rolling in for a triple kill here on the world stage. Not bad to put down the SCC team.
Vote said, I'm tired of waiting. I want to play. And he picks up a triple 35 minutes in. Enhanced Fire Giant. Going to go the way of SSG as well. Two tier 2 towers standing between the Chaos team and the base of Mind the Gap. Best of luck. We thought early game was the best point. Defense of the Titan, not looking so good with this draft.
We just saw a great argument for controlling vision around Fire Giant and getting the Oni Fury in the late game. Those were the keys. When Mind the Gap had to come in 5v4, they didn't have a chance in that last FG fight, and SSG won it quickly. And now, if they couldn't win the 5v4, I don't know about the 5v2, Myth. Can they hold on here? Becomes the question as Vote melts this right side Phoenix. And I do mean melt. Never stood a chance. But it looks like SSG are going to pull up.
Look, smart decision for Mind the Gap to put up 0 defense there. If anyone dies, I mean, that's just game. But now SSG at least have to go back and work through the towers again. Losing out on that Fire Giant side Phoenix as well, not the biggest deal on the planet. That's one of the easiest Phoenixes to defend while simultaneously defending a Fire Giant in the future if Mind the Gap are able to weather the storm that Space Station is about to rain down on them.
See if they can hold on. They'll have 5 minions to worry about in right, almost certainly giving up the tier 2 and mid, and then just defending on Phoenixes in left and mid as a result. How do you like the defense for this comp? I mean, you don't mind Discordia there. Guan Yu heals are not bad either.
But it's such a frontline defense, right? It's not like we could defend from a range. It's not like something a Thoth could bring or something along those lines. Yeah, they got to go in. And I'm not sure I want to go in on SSG. 11,000 gold up, Fire Giant on 5 members. Anyone steps up, they're going to lose out a ton of health as Wolves looking for something here. Any stragglers from SSG, but sees 5 members and thinks better of it.
I like this retreat. You would love to have that 6th man of your Phoenix contributing in this fight, so Mind the Gap are going to back up. They stepped up to see if there's anything in the information they could glean, and what they found was that they needed to fall back. So SSG now get the chance to make their siege work from range, and they've got a great shot to do it. They've been so strong this game when they're the ones starting to fight against Mind the Gap. That's how it'll look here.
I'm surprised to see SSG don't elect to push up that center of the map as well. That minion wave's so far away. The tier 2 tower likely would have been free, but they want to have as much time possible with this enhanced Fire Giant to work on this Phoenix.
I feel like they want to win this fight big until they move in. Quig, though, gets the beads out from Cheerio, who turns around and starts shredding Grip. He has to leap away in order to escape, and that means left side Phoenix is done for at this point. Wolves might not be far behind it as Vote is on a rampage, an absolute maniac as he shreds through Mind the Gap. Snipes from Vote, put out a little bit of damage, but not enough. And now we're seeing kind of your point here. SSG, instead of moving right over to the mid Phoenix, kind of have to go back and get the tier 2, and there's no minion wave.
Luckily, though, Enhanced Fire Giant going to deal with those backdoor protections very easily. But I got to highlight Vote there. My man hit all 3 shots from the sky on an invisible target. Crimson has got to be calling hacks or something there. That's a tilter.
Yeah, not going to be feeling good about that. When mid Phoenix falls, it's just the Titan standing at this point, Mifflin. And that's not going to make things easy for Mind the Gap. They do not have Wolves. It's a 4v5. No relics to speak of for Crimson, and only the ultimate for Layers and for the Discordia as well. Meanwhile, SSG are coming in well-equipped, well-stocked to burn through. And Quig seems to be the first target. He's already lost damages. In moves SSG onto the Titan. The SPL team wants to strike first and go up 1-0 in this set. It looks like they're going to do it. Mind the Gap just cannot defend. And that'll be it for this one. SSG come out on top.
But it was slow, wasn't it, Finch? It felt like SSG could have gas pedaled a little bit sooner. It felt like they were showing a lot of respect to this Mind the Gap draft, even in the late game where I feel like they had a 100-0 matchup right there. It was insane how favored they were, and they've still waited such a long time. It's that discipline that you expect to see from SSG, but maybe just a little bit too much of it for my liking.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too much, but I do like that they put themselves in a no-lose scenario, right? I mean, every step of the way, they made sure that they dotted their I's and crossed their T's, but when they're up against the best of the best, Ghosts ain't going to respect that pace, right? I mean, Radiants aren't going to respect that pace. So as long as this is just a Mind the Gap special, I'm all right with it. Game number 1 goes to SSG, but we'll see what happens next after the break.
Mind the gap, make sure it's a long one, but unfortunately are not able to close out game number 1. Space Station Gaming are the ones that take that one. But remember, as we watch this one, we kind of want to know how you out there are watching it as well. As Aggro had said yesterday, I think it was someone on Twitter you had credited it to, the crowd might not all be in one place, but we're everywhere watching right now. So you can use hashtag SWC at home and be able to show us, hey, there's Joe. That's going to be coming up. She's going to be watching at home, happy that Aggro isn't there right now.
I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I do not think she's watching right now. I think she'll go, oh, yeah, great day, huh? Anyways, here's what I did, and that's what's going to happen whenever I get home. But she is very comfortable in her Maxonomic chair, which she stole to teach from home today.
Oh, the back-to-back Knights Championship. Go Neil. That's what they want to see. Wish we were there.
That is awesome.
Again, you can use hashtag SWC at home to show us how you're watching. I don't know that Offrin is actually there, but there's a nice little, maybe a little bit of a spoiler, a little leaky-doo coming out before we have hi-rez Presents tomorrow. Of course, you're going to have to tune in for that one all day Thursday. That's going to be a fun one. But right now, the big conversation is Space Station Gaming, Mind the Gap. It goes about 40 minutes, and that's not what you wanted to see. I mean, you wanted it over faster than that just because that's how Mind the Gap could win that game.
Yeah, if Mind the Gap are going to win, it's not by taking it 40 minutes. And look, they did a lot of very positive things in this game. Layers looked amazing in the early to mid-game. He was phenomenal. We saw Griff really turn up in that mid-game. I thought that he played aggressively enough to assuage my worries of him playing a little bit too scared in that lane. But I feel like what we were talking about on the desk really comes to pass, is that you Mind the Gap is close. They're doing things well, and oh, well, we're not all grouped up for an Oni Fury. Wolves is clearing right, and Layers is on back right, so Space Station get a free Oni Fury. And then, oh, well, now we've got to go clear Oni Waves, but Space Station's going straight to EFG, so we've got to now make a choice. And Quig had a couple really bad engages, I thought. Just exactly what I thought would happen for Mind the Gap. The pace of SPL late game is unlike anything that they've played with before. And not to mention, their draft is not great at fighting late. Guan Jungle is not a good late game pick. He just doesn't scale that well. He's much more of an early to mid game character. So Mind the Gap did a lot of things well. It's just that they didn't hit that gas fast enough. I thought that the real moment that they had to turn up the gas was around that 21-minute mark. Griff gets the pick on the Cherio. Then Raffer wanders into the DMZ and gets flattened by the entire MTG squad. And then they get a tier 1 and a tier 2 off of it, extend their lead to 1,000 gold.
Yeah.
It's not enough. I would have much rather seen Mind the Gap go straight to fire after that. Is it risky? Of course. Could you instantly lose the game off that play? Yes. But in my mind, dragging it to 40, that game was over 10 minutes before that because SSG started to get momentum. As soon as this team gets momentum, they are not going to relinquish it. If you're going to lose, I'd much rather lose with the chance to win, like a risky Fire Giant call, than the slow bleed out that we saw in Game 1.
And if you saw, it was a 7 KDA there for Vote. 6-1, Dardes undying as well in that game. And look, this is 2 times in a row we have seen a mid laner, at least 2 days in a row, I should say, hit that 25,000 damage mark. Granted, this was a longer game than some of the ones we got to see yesterday, so he had more opportunity to do that. But then adding in the fact that Nika also had 24,000 damage, it kind of makes me more worried about it. If you are sitting at Mind the Gap, you know, you're in the team, are you demoralized by that? Like, you already kind of come into it knowing you have, you know, nothing to lose, right? You expect SSG to win. So can you come back into game number 2 just as fresh?
Absolutely. I think that if there's one thing that I'd be taking away from Mind the Gap, it's that we aren't just straight up worse than these dudes to the point where they're going to embarrass us here today. That's always the concern in the back of your mind, like, oh, this is one of the best team in the SPL. Maybe we just can't compete, even if our strategy, what if we play perfectly, we pick and ban perfectly, we come in, we execute our game plan, and we just aren't good enough as players to win anyways?
Yeah.
That fear isn't realistic, and I think that game proves it. Mind the Gap can do positive things. They can outplay Spacestation mechanically. They can do all the things you need to do in order to win. Now they need to marry that to the actual strategy that we should be seeing.
The hard part of execute on that. Like, you showcase that it's there. And honestly, if they have a late game draft, I mean, maybe we're still watching them at 30 minutes compete a little bit closer with SSG. Maybe they lose it faster because they didn't have the early game draft.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that way.
So it'll be an interesting shakeup. I do have some bad news for them, though. SSG, I decided to look this one up just because I wanted to know. I have it, so why not look at it? 64% win rate when they are first pick. Maybe not that massive number that you would expect from a team like this who has dominated the league for as long as they did, but definitely something you still have to be worried about. It's the Persephone now alongside that set that is going to get banned. On the other side, this Cupid getting taken away. And this is where, again, it just comes to difficulty. I'm looking at these bans. The Guan Yu may be a little out of pocket because not something that we've seen a lot from SSG, but realistically, Aggro, it's so hard to say Mind the Gap are banning wrong things, and it's hard to say that they're able to get all of the right things.
Yeah, that's what makes Spacestation really good. We've talked about it a lot. Their picks and bans are really strong. Their god pools are near unbeatable whenever they get the things that they want to get, and it's hard to keep them off of those. So I think that it's pretty tough to make a definitive call either way. Interesting to me that Mind the Gap decide not to ban Raw here, and I agree with it because Dardes has played a lot of things very well in mid lane. I think he's one of the best mid laners we've ever seen in the SPL, but he hasn't shown us a Raw quite yet. Now, can he play it? Almost certain. But show me, make him prove it to you. I think that's fine. Now, leaving open the Erlong Shen for Cherio feels like a little bit more of a mistake to me. The Morrigan was certainly problematic for them in that game, but this is what SSG does to you. You have to leave things open. You have to leave things open you don't want to, and it happens to be Erlong this game.
Yeah, I was sitting here trying to figure out, if your first pick, what in the world guides you to ban Yamoja? And, well, that would do it. Hey, I got a pentakill on this, a few quadra kills on this, add in multiple triple kills, double kills. Like, this is the pick for Cherio that I think has been the most successful for SSG. And they get this not unbeatable, but pretty damn difficult to beat Aphrodite from SSG. I don't know. Look, Rom Scylla, that's good for Mind the Gap, but I'm having trouble here.
I just hate the Scylla pick, or I hate it. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you think that your best chances are to win early, and look, maybe what I think and what Mind the Gap think internally are different. There certainly could be a disconnect in that way, but I can't imagine looking at what SSG does and going, yeah, I think we can beat them late game. That doesn't make any sense to me. And now you've left open Aphrodite. It's not like they forgot about it entirely. They banned it game 1, and they go, okay, let's go Rom Scylla. And Spacestation get to pick Erlong Afro. You've already got your pocket on the healer side from the Aphrodite, and you already have the guy you're going to pocket in the Erlong Shen. I don't know. Mind the Gap can't now. I can't envision a world where their 3v3 is ever better in the early game because Aphrodite, even though her healing skills up really late game, her 3v3 fight in mid is fantastic from level 3 on. You end up in a position now where I don't know how you really win your 3v3s.
And in game 1, you'd kind of mentioned, and now this Odin pick actually maybe helping this out, that you can deal with an Aphrodite, and maybe not the easiest, again, but of all the healers, single target healing, it's up on a decently long cooldown compared to some other abilities. Yep. Is this Odin the way to do it? I mean, it's only around that ult that you get that anti-heal.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I'm okay with it because at least this shows me that Mind the Gap is thinking about it. They came in with a game plan. It's not like they saw Erlong Afro on the other side and they went, oh, fellas, we have made a grave mistake in this moment. I might be thinking that, but they have something that they feel like they can work. And don't forget that Wolves is the Odin one trick. I mean, this dude played Odin from day one. On God, I played against Wolves Odin what felt like every time we played against him. I swear his Odin does more damage than other Odins. I don't know how, but it just does. This is a guy who's played this pick a ton. If there's someone who can make it work, I think it makes sense for them to think that putting Wolves on Odin is an answer. I just don't.
Well, they're going to be able to figure something out with it, right? I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
you have to. The Apollo there as well. I mean, when we've been looking at it, at least for the cage walls, we've been talking a lot about Ymir walls and how great it is to have like a way to block them down. Aphrodite can't necessarily break through there. Same thing for Erlang Shin. They'll have to do it the hard way. But Apollo has a lot of mobility that we've seen. It's the support's turns, though, this time around to start getting taken down. The Ganesh, wouldn't be surprised to see potentially a Kepri here because that's been big for Raffer. The Ymir on the other side is the interesting thing because picks like Sobek are still available. And for someone who was so prominent at the end of Phase 2 and that we got to see in playoffs, we haven't seen a whole lot of him.
Yeah, and when we did see him, he didn't look that good yesterday, frankly. So I still think if I'm SSG, that's a ban that I would be considering. I don't know how much they know about Quig's God Pool. They could be looking to ban away other warriors that you can play over there in that lane. You could try and take away something like the Kuzenbo, which I know Quig plays. But Sobek seems like a good ban for SSG for me. I think Mind the Gap have to ban Kepri. If you don't, I don't know who you kill that isn't either linked to Afro that has healing and an ultimate that makes them invulnerable, or an ultimate that makes it so you can't kill them. Good luck if that's the case. I feel like Mind the Gap are almost priced into banning Kepri at this point.
This is actually one of my favorite things when we're watching these teams. Like, you notice it takes a little while for that ban to come through. First off, it also says pass ban on there as well. So I'm looking at this as something that you spend that entire time, you know Mind the Gap are talking, not just about that ban, but what picks do we want, what do we think they're going to go for, and how do we deal with this in the game? That's my favorite thing about those timers and watching these teams burn them, is knowing that they're letting those gears grind through their head. The steam starts coming out as they start thinking too hard about it. But a pass ban in a place where Kepri, at least in my mind, belonged, and now SSG are going for something like this Bologna, it feels like they've jumped off the rails.
Yeah, Bologna a little bit interesting, and it's Xingqian instead of the Kepri, so SSG kind of throws Mind the Gap a bone as far as I'm concerned. But Xingqian lends itself more to that early fight potential anyways. You've got a lot of control now with this Bologna. Don't forget that Bologna did get a couple buffs coming into the World Championship. I was wondering if we would see her a little bit more. Fenrir ends up being the final selection here. Not in love with that pickup against Apollo. That Serenade, such a good shutdown tool, but if you can bait it out, it's fine. My concern now is that this Odin is likely not in Wolves' hand. Probably going to be going either in the jungle for layers or for Quig in support, though I think it's likely to be the jungle for layers. Odin is not the playmaker's god. He's just not. It's the god that you want to give to the dude who understands his role. It is going to do his job. It's like telling Jordan he's got to pass more. Like, no, dude, shoot. It just doesn't fit with what I think my opinion of Mind the Gap's identity should be. And they're trying now, in my mind, too hard to work off of what SSG is doing. They're too worried about what Spacestation Gaming is doing and not worried enough about their own game plans. If you're not getting off to a lead with Odin Jungle, what are you doing?
And when we got into this, the thing you had said is Layers can have an 8-0 performance and he can have an 0-10 performance.
Yeah.
I see this Odin and I have flashbacks and almost certainly to a memory of 0-10 games. Like, I mean, this is not something that they have had a lot of success with taking into the jungle. So if they do opt to bring that there, I don't know, things are getting a little rough. That Bologna, the Xingqian, again, wildcards, that Apollo has been on the rise. In this world, and this is where it comes down to it, I kept mentioning Kepri. I'm going to mention him again here, even though he's not on the screen, because Kepri Aphrodite has been oppressive. It has been obnoxious to deal with is the only way I can think, because you get 7 lives out of a 5-man team now. But this Xingqian gets you aggressive. Is it a better pick, or does it just really help shut down Mind the Gap here?
Well, the anti-auto attack is going to help a lot against the 4 physical. I mean, they're going to do a lot of their damage with those auto attacks, and you have a character now that can get out of Odin Cage without the use of a Phantom or needing someone to break down the walls for him. So if Raffer's going to play fast and loose with his positioning like he did in Game 1, then maybe someone who has a little bit more mobility to get out of those situations is what SSG needed. But frankly, Gore, I really feel like SSG could have picked Opwash support in this game, and I would like their draft more. I think they were that far ahead with their first 4 picks that Raffer's pick is good in the Xingqian, but almost unnecessary.
Now, would it have been a Blink Opwash, or,
Of
or like,
course,
would you have grabbed like an Age?
Yeah, no, it's the only way to play it, apparently. It's Blink Opwash.
Hey, it's got a 100% win rate.
Sure
That's
do.
weird to say. It definitely has knocked me out. You get Ramen Silla, though. I would even argue Wukong to what we've been seeing. have lasted better and longer games. Like Wukong can do some stuff early on. He can solo people. We saw that yesterday. Variety unfortunately had that lane as a rat against a Wukong that didn't necessarily go too well.
Oh.
Yeah, Bologna's definitely going to be harder to kill, I think, outright than a Ratatosker. But Odin and Fenrir don't really make me think of those late game compositions. It feels like this is a draft from Mind the Gap that's kind of fighting itself.
Yeah, your Rom Scylla, I mean, Rom, good early game pressure, not great early game fight. Scylla, not good early game pressure or early game fight. She's really there, I guess, as the insurance policy. Mind the Gap, and if I had to guess, probably had conversations along the line of, okay, let's try and do what we did last game where we're up about 1,000 gold 25 minutes in. But we need some more oomph out of Crimson in this game. Let's just give someone, and it happens to be Crim in this game, a pick where if we do go 35 minutes, we trust that he can just make plays and carry the game for us. I just think that the selling out for the all-in is way better in this instance. The setup is good enough with Ragnarok that you can get some good I'm a Monsters off in this game, but Xingqian is so tanky and Bologna is so tanky, and oh yeah, whoever you Ragnarok's getting Undying loved anyways, so I don't know who you're killing.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. But again, it comes down to, you know, SSG, the name that is blaringly loud behind me, right? They're the team everyone has expected to see here, but Mind the Gap, from the open circuit, played in weekly tournaments, won through a loser's bracket. They're in an interesting position here if they want to lift that hammer. Let's go over to Finch and Mifflin to see if they can find their way back.
Thanks on the desk there, Goran Aggro. Mind the Gap drags Space Station into a 35-minute game. Can they do it again here, Mifflin? Maybe find a way to get to a point where they're ahead. They have an aggressive front line, a late-game back line. Maybe that combination can work from here. They're putting Quig back on the Fenrir. He struggled a bit with this last game against a very similar Relic outlook. He think he can make it work here this time. Yeah. Hope you're ready for some SCLT, Space Station, because I might be on the way. Mind the Gap are positioned to perhaps be aggressive and maybe waiting on this actual blue buff to spawn for him to get the aggro from it and then jump in when he least expects it. But they're going to end up catching Cheerio. Is the trap for Cheerio or is it for Nika? We'll get the chance to see where it sprung. Layers blinks in. Cheerio pops the beads early, but there is the aggression. But they don't get the kill. Is that zero sum? Do they need the kill there for that to work? Wow. And Griff got his... And Griff has his purple buff as well. That is a huge start for him over there in that duo in the 1v2. He only has the one health pot. I didn't see, but I wonder if he started with a hog or something to confirm it. We'll get a chance to confirm it later on, but a nice start there for him. They put the pressure over on the solo side of the map, and then they have Griff make sure the buffs occurs as well, so that they're able to keep right on pushing. So I like this for Mind the Gap, though. This is Mind the Gap coming in and showing SSG a different look, not making this simple for SSG, not showing them the same thing that they've dealt with hundreds of times before. Instead, this is Mind the Gap coming in and saying, hey, SSG, you have got to react on the fly to a different type of strat.
Yeah, normally we talk about it in reverse, right? Mind the Gap have to deal with this SPL strategy. They have to figure out and adapt to what the SPL meta is. And now, Space Station, they're in uncharted waters. I mean, I've never seen the support go for something like that on that side of the map in Season 7. And now Quig finally makes his way back over to the duo lane. With the blue buff, he's going to have additional CDR. He's going to be maybe about a half level down, but the ability to put out pressure is certainly there.
Plus, Cheerio doesn't have the purification beads. If Layer's able to catch up to him, then with that stun and that third ability, he might have a chance to cause some punish there as well, perhaps even interrupt the dash there from him. This is an excellent start from Mind the Gap, but we're going to need to see them keep on building. If this is the first layer of a foundation, then we're going to need to see a bit more.
I like it, though. I like where they're starting. And you know what? Aggro City didn't much care for this Mind the Gap draft. I'm sure it's a little bit outclassed by what Space Station is bringing if you're just going to go by raw tier list. But Mind the Gap looked so much better at the 30-minute mark in Game 1 than they had any right to.
Right.
And now, in Game 2, they've at least got a couple of tools that are going to scale very well into the late game. Layers is going to force a Phantom pickup. Crimson's going to scale well on this Scylla. Griff is one of the best late-game hunters in the game right now. I think Mind the Gap might have come away with something a little bit better here.
Now some aggression to the blue buff. Again, Layers and Wolves are the team. Stun lands to Cherio, who does not have the beads, so he's going to have to hold all of this CC, but good work by Nika to at least keep his jungler alive. But this is the pressure Mind the Gap need. We didn't see it on the duo side of the map last game, so they brought it over here to the right side, and they're bringing it.
Yeah, call it confidence.
What?
They want the blue buff, and Nika doesn't quite confirm
close.
it. Wolves gets it for himself there, and Nika trades out his beads as well, so now he's got to play
Look at
much
his
safer.
face.
Is that worth it? Is it trading out the beads when you even had this much pressure put on you worth it? Now he's got to play very safe. This next blue buff is going to be as easy to defend.
Did you see the way Nika looked at the player cams? That's why I'm glad we have those. I think this start might be affecting my man a little. There is nothing more aggravating than when you're in solo and used to fragging out in your 1v1 where all of a sudden there's all this presence over here. Leave me alone, man. Maybe Nika getting a little bit frustrated with it at the start. We'll see. I like this, though. Quig is starting to rotate out a duo. You saw Raffer left right away and try to pull Quig a little bit away from over there in the duo and bullying folks. I think that's a good start from him. Try and make them come over to the mid, or maybe have a better chance against it.
It's almost like a revitalized Mind the Gap here. They're looking a lot more confident, especially considering they're coming off a loss this time around. But
Princess
Space
wants lost
Station, certainly no slouch. This draft is Space Station through and through, isn't it? Cherio on the Erlang Shen. Dardes gets his Aphrodite, even Raffer. We thought it might have been a Kepri on the desk, but we know Raffer loves this Jing Shen pick as well. And if we were expecting any quicker of a pace from SSG, I don't think we should. They're going to be waiting for the absolute late game, so early game should favor Mind the Gap.
And I think Layers has got to be active. Got to. There's no Phantom right now, right? It's the Shell and 4 sets of Purification beads. You have a couple members who can make it out of there. Raffer can. Vote maybe can get out of there with his ult. But for the most part, you should be able to consistently lock down Dardes, force out that Undying Love. I need Layers to be active.
Yeah, I want to see a ring around Dardes every time it's up. If I look over the right side of the screen and Layers this little diamond that indicates the ultimate is filled in, it's crazy to me that Dardes is getting away with actual highway robbery.
Oh, look at this rotation. SSG are such a good team. Look at this awareness to come over. You guys are pressuring our blue buff. What if we bring the 4? Good luck trying to take it now, but Mind the Gap are responding the same way. Crimson is rotating into a 4-on-4 over the 5.5-minute blue buff. Let's see if Mind the Gap can win it. Wolves in a great position for this ultimate. He needs to be aware.
Huge.
And there it is. Locks in 2. Crimson has the I'm a Monster. And the Whirlwind of Rage is still better. It gets 3 people. And that's going to turn this fight on its head. Oh, Wolves. Inks manages to make his way out of there. Mind the Gap are low HP. But Mifflin, that's how SSG respond. They bring in 4 and defend that blue buff well.
Raffer just threw 3 people straight into a wall and Mind the Gap make it out alive. Fantastic disengage from the Box Boys. It was a good attempt on the blue buff. Doesn't quite pan out their way, but Space Station clearly have to show some respect.
They had the awareness, and that is Mind the Gap putting their pressure on. SSG had to bring 4 people over just to answer it out. This is Mind the Gap finding ways to move SSG out of their comfort zone, but now the Order side team is looking for the invade. Some of these Harpies getting stolen away, and then Cheerio will move on his way. But you did see at the very least, Layers was able to drop down that ultimate and cause some problems. We just didn't get as much value as they needed to out of maybe the Scylla joining in, the I'm a Monster, but clearly that recipe is good. They just needed all to be there.
Yeah, I'm a Monster, unfortunately, was only able to connect with 1 target there, and it was a target that was also connected to Dardes, right? So the healing comes through the second that cage falls down. But Mind the Gap, man, they played that team fight incredibly well. Had the Scylla damage come through just a little bit better, that would have been a double kill. She would have got the reset on the I'm a Monster, and they're all stuck inside a cage. So clearly the follow-up is there, and Mind the Gap continually being on the offensive, continually finding proactive plays. They're looking very confident on the world stage.
I'm glad that this team came in with a different look, right? If they had come in and just tried the same thing we saw before, I'd have been worried. And what about the mental fortitude from Quig on the world stage to tell his team, lock me in, Finra? I could not, in my wildest of dreams, have tried that.
No. Game 1, Quig got handily mitigated, right? And then Game 2, let me run that back. That's
Confident,
confidence.
man.
That is raw, unadulterated confidence, and you gotta
knows he can
respect
play
him. You gotta respect him for it.
He absolutely knows that's something he can execute. Maybe if he didn't like the look he got in Game 1, right, when he immediately was handed 5 sets of Purification beads and was kind of shut out from the onset. This time, though, there's going to be a good deal more pressure on those for him, so maybe Quake can look a little bit better in this one. That's got to be what he's thinking. And how do Mind the Gap, you already said it, but how do they not give up first blood in that last team fight? So crazy they all make it out of there alive as Wolves try to start some action. But again, a 4-man rotation from both teams. They have another big fight over blue, but SSG have already secured it.
Yeah, round 2, second verse, same as the first. Mind the Gap try, but aren't quite capable to steal it away. Space Station confirm it, and still 8 minutes in, no first blood, but we couldn't call this a slow-paced game, could we? It's been constant fighting from both teams here, just tooth and nail, trying to establish some sort of lead, and there is none. It's 100 gold, 100 experience. This is as close as it gets.
It really, really is. And Mind the Gap are going to need to tilt these skills a bit, and they've got the chance, right? They have this Sunder there at their disposal. That gives them blow-up potential. They have the Odin Cage as well. I'm a monster at times. Can feel like an execute the way that it can shut you down with all its damage. They just have to line those pieces up. They got to find a way to execute those cleanly onto the right targets. And so far, Dardes has been trying to mitigate that, trying to get a way to split up this Space Station team. Seems like the key to me.
And Mind the Gap's getting awfully close to the first timer that Space Station's put on them. That second relic, we're rapidly approaching level 12. And once Phantom comes through, Layers gonna have a much harder time.
Well, Nika's low, and Layers is here to look for the dive, but Quig is low in the back as well. He continues to run as Nika makes it back to safety. Good escape from both members there. But Quig, he's not out just yet. Rapper rotates into the back, forces Quig to use the ultimate, and gets caught up in the whirlwind of rage and steel. What a play from the SSG support.
Meanwhile, on the other side, Cherio wants to do the same. Nika picks up Layers. Wolves now in the retreat. Gonna need the transformation to get out of there. Does he have it? The slow's good, but it's not good enough. The bird is gonna do it.
Rapper gets a double to start the game.
Nice.
2-0 for the Xingqian pilot from SSG. What a start from the SPL reps. And here's the thing, man. As Griff is in some trouble, Vote gets another. It's 4-0 to start it. Mind the Gap has some good strategies here, some good plans, but SSG just seem to be ready.
Just 0 to 100 real quick. It was such a tight game, and then all of a sudden, literally every lane on the map fell for Mind the Gap. But they're not out of it. It's only 2,000 gold, 10 minutes in. They can still fight in. Wolves uses that time in base to finish up that soul leader. He's going to be able to come out of base, have a little bit of penetration. Lifesteal, the bully, should favor him inside the lane, even though Nika's able to pick up a kill. Wolves still has a level lead.
He certainly does. This could still be strong for them. When you've got an upgraded Sunder on your side, you can blow up the opponent at any time if you're able to land that onto a priority target. When you've got the Odin Cage, you can lock someone out at any given moment. SSG have had the answers for now, but can they continue to answer what Mind the Gap might bring at them seems to be the question. But there are some nice level advantages. Vote about a level and a half above Griff, who just hit level 11. Cherio up 2. Mind the Gap have some good strats, but they have to do them now at a little bit of a disadvantage.
I think Mind the Gap needs to shift their attention. It's not often I'll tell a team to focus someone that isn't Aphrodite, if there's an Aphrodite on the enemy team, but Vote's starting to get a little bit out of hand, isn't he? It's closer to a 2-level lead at this point. He's already got the Devo's gloves stacked up as well. Someone's going to have to go over there and help out Griff.
Yeah, my man's working on a fail knot right now. A lot of the times we see the attack speed start there, but Quig has pulled a Rapper into the tower. And I don't even know if my man took damage. Dardes drops the Undying Glove. That keeps Raffer healthy, gets him out of there. And that's what's going to be tough. When you fight on this Afro, how can you confirm a kill?
Yeah, that's exactly what Aggro is worried about, man. Ragnarok is going to be such a hard-to-use tool. He's going to have to save it for much later in these fights because Dardes can mitigate it every single time. We saw it there, and I don't think it's the last we're going to see of it.
Not at all. We know Dardes works this pick so well, but in comes Wolves, and Dardes is low. The beats are down. They know Undying Love has been used, so they got to get the kill, but I'm the monster off the mark. Cheerio able to take care of Quake, but there's the cage, and Layers is ready to play. They take care of Dardes first, but Wolves loses his life. Cheerio gets the double, and SSG still coming out on top.
That's why we were worried about Vote, man. He dunks down, helps out with the kills, and now Cheerio surging forward. They're not done. Griffin Layers going to be forced all the way back into the tier 2.
They got to completely retreat. I don't even know if they can defend this purple buff. Well, I got my answer. It's no, as SSG steal one more buff away from this console representative, the SOC representative here, trying to make it work up against one of the very best teams we have in SSG. And so far, SSG have had all kinds of answers, but Mind the Gap have all kind of questions, right? They've been putting them to the test. and maybe SSG will slip up.
I really like that analogy, Fishy. Oh, they got the answers. There's a big test, a lot of questions. We threw some cheese at them. You're kind of killing it right now, man. And
I gotta hope
Gap,
so.
They can do it. You're absolutely right to point that out because we saw what can work. If Wolves is able to rotate in, find the Aphrodite, isolate Dardes, set up for layers to get the cage, that's where these fights are going to start to swing in their favor. Just unfortunately, it hasn't quite panned out that way.
Yeah, this is a look back at some of the work coming out here for Cheerio and how he was able to get that very impressive double kill. Even with that Odin cage, it just was not enough to slow him down. And this is why I'm telling you, him and Sam are a push on any given day. One of them is the best jungler we've got.
It truly does feel like that, but how many pentas does that boy Sam have?
That's
All
a
right,
good point.
maybe I'm a Cherry fanboy. You can accuse me of it.
You're
I
an
love
SSG
watching.
fanboy, no question.
These guys are cool, man. They play ice cold, and you know what? Rapper winning Worlds on the way out in the last bit
How
of his
cool would
career.
it be?
That would be one of the best storylines we've ever got. But first, they're gonna have to work through Mind the Gap, and certainly not gonna make it easy. 36 minutes in the first game.
Right.
I think we're gonna look for another late game team fight here to win this one out. Mind the Gap certainly have the ability to fight it out in the late.
But look at this call from SSG. They're just taking the Gold Fury up in the sky to contest this Griff. So SSG reset. That's more than a reset. They've given it up. Griff solo stops them from doing the Gold Fury all on his own. A huge play from the ADC.
Yeah, fantastic recognition, but that's all he did was slow them down. Now, Space Station are gonna have to look for a way to re-pull this Gold Fury. Cheerio hovering around it, and so is Quig. It seems like Mind the Gap have the positional advantage as well with the Soul Laner already towards the center of the map, so Space Station thinking better of it. They're gonna go ahead and wait for another opportunity later on.
Yeah, that seems like it's going to be the call there from him backing up because Griff had the heads-up awareness to stop them on that Fury. Hasn't Griff played well here today? I mean, back in game one, he kind of had the sole big play for them in the late game by locking down Rapper and setting up for that big double kill that kept them in it late. And then here, stopping them on the Gold Fury. My man's kind of stepping up for when they need it. They're going to need more of that. Take a look at Crimson. First item, Rod of Tahuti. They are trying to swing in this game. That's the only way they're going to do it. I think Mind the Gap have got to only use haymakers, right? That's the only way they would.
Yeah, aim for the chin and make sure it lands cleanly. And I like this Tahuti pickup, especially up against an Aphrodite. If someone's low, you need to kill him instantly, kind of like SSG on this gold.
Well, maybe they can get Rapper in trade. It would be a good one if they could get it as SSG takes care of the gold. There's the cage and the crush to rock him down. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel gets the beads out from Crimson, and Rapper still has his life. Once again, Mind the Gap are so close to making a big play. But SSG get out, so now Cheerio moves in all alone, gets aggressive, forces I'm a monster out, which does put Rapper low, but Crimson lower as Wolves rotates over for a big kill, but Vogt dunks down on Crimson. Quig finds the big stun, forces out Undying Love, and now Dardes in trouble. A falling Wolves can't get the damage. He gets himself a double, and Mind the Gap aren't going home yet.
Wolves alone in the back,
Let's
trying
go,
his
Griff!
best to fight. Griff picks up a kill on a Cherry. Layers makes it out alive, but Vogt left uncontested. Finally forced to use the beads. Wolves, you're alone in enemy territory.
Has to use the Ox form to retreat, so he will be able to get back to safety. It's SSG in enemy territory, and they're putting on the hurt. So it ends up being a 3 for 3, I believe, here at the end of the day, if Layers didn't die there towards the beginning. But that's the best fight we've seen from Mind the Gap yet. Maybe a bit of an overstep from SSG, but Mind the Gap had the answers.
They did, but unfortunately, Mind the Gap are going to lose out on the tier 1 tower as well here. Man, Dardes got way too much value, as did Rapper.
Yeah.
Rapper isolated alone between the towers, 3 people on him, somehow burns Scylla's beads and makes it out alive, falls later on, but Rapper's doing a lot here.
He really, really is, man. We talk about Rapper sometimes as though he's a bit up and down, but I don't think that's entirely fair. My man is way more up than down. Sometimes a little bit off the mark, but today he's feeling it. His Mind the Gap startup Pyromancer, but Rapper's on the way. He's been doing it all day. Can he do it here again? Crush is there for the secure, and Mind the Gap do it cleanly on Pyro, but here's the fight after.
And Nika surging forward ever so slightly, seeing if he could force something. If Space Station had been grouped up a little bit tighter, potentially we see a fight erupt there over positional advantage around the Fire Giant. But with Griff on the opposite side of the map and Vogt having to control that as well, it seems like both teams are willing to let that one just fizzle out.
Wow, look at how high of a level Vogt is. Level 18.
Dirty.
While Griff is still 14. And listen, Griff's been doing work. He just can't do it alone against this Vogt guy. His team has been camped over in the solo lane basically all game. So he's kind of had to fly solo on this one. It's been tough trying to keep up with Vogt in that long lane. It's Mind the Gap now trying to defend this purple, but Cheerio and Dardes are here. Taunt ends up missing. Quig makes it out of there for free. And that's the ult on cooldown for Cheerio.
And it feels like already there's been a switch that's flipped. Space Station are playing much more aggressive.
Yeah.
They're trying to put as much pressure in as possible, and watch Vote.
He's going up to the sky, lands down onto Griff. The follow-up is there, and Griff can't make it up to the sky. Vote does get pulled in, but Undying Love will be the thing that saves him. Cheerio, though, pays for the aggression as he falls, but Vote gets Quig. So far, a 2-for-1. As the cage locks in Raffer. I'm a monster.
Oh, no.
He's there, but Raffer's still healthy and alive. And now they got to do something to keep Wolves alive because the dive could be here from SSG.
Dardez still healthy, and he's going to make sure the rest of his team is as well. Nika finally comes on over just to make sure that Mind the Gap can't step forward there. But they were able to bring back at least one kill. Cheerio oversteps and loses his life. Now can Mind the Gap defend a tier 2?
Looks like they can push him back for now. It's a 4v3 in favor of Space Station Gaming, but they're not going to force it. They're not going to push in. About a 3,000 gold lead for them, so maybe feeling comfortable here at this point in the game. But Mind the Gap keep taking a little bit back every time, don't they? SSG aren't getting away with it for free.
They aren't. 3,500 gold, 18 minutes in. The longer this game goes, the less that gold means. Mind the Gap are hanging in there admirably, and it's only one fight away from completely closing this lead. SSG have so many of their towers available to them. If Mind the Gap wins one engagement, we're looking at a completely even match.
And look at the anti-heal check as Raffer tries to contest that. Harpy it is. Cursed Ankh, Odin Cage, Contagion on layers as well, and this Divine Ruin. So they've got some tools here to try and limit what Dardez can do, but most of what makes Dardez a problem is the Undying Love in combat and then his ability to heal once the fight's over. That's the part they're struggling to mitigate. They've got to make sure they're taking lives quickly before all that extra value from Dardez can get there.
Yeah, preferably Dardez's life too,
That'd
right?
be the
You
best.
want that guy dead almost immediately in this engagement, but as you've already highlighted, they have the tools to do it. If Layers can find a cage in the back, immediately they can look to shut it down, because take a peek at the relics of Space Station, doesn't seem to me that they've elected to pick up a Phantom.
Yeah, not paying much respect to Layers as Odin Cage, and I think they might pay for that as Crimson is in some trouble already. Raffer catches him with the Whirlwind Rage and Steel, but ends up throwing him forward, so Vote can't follow up. I'm not sure that's quite what Raffer wanted there, as Vote's ultimate doesn't find a home. He has to come back, but their next Fury is about to spawn. I'm sure SSG are happy to go there.
They sure are, and they've got such good positioning around it. Take a peek at Raffer. My man is creating football fields of space, just making sure that Griffin Quig can't walk in there. Mind the Gap, gonna let this one go down for free. Primal Fury goes the way of Space Station. Now Fire Giant, gonna be a little bit easier.
Crimson speeds are down. That's earned by Raffer earlier. So much more vulnerable now is the Scylla player for Mind the Gap. Gold Fury, as you said, or Fury goes down for SSG, and now they're going to brute force push this left side tier 2. They don't even have Miniwave with them just yet. They're just walking on in and letting Vote do the work, and there's no one coming over to contest. SSG now seem to have pulled far enough ahead that Mind the Gap aren't even trying to step up to them, but I like this. Maybe they could look to lock down Nika in right. That could be the plan for them.
Man, I gotta give some props to Nika there. He plays the right side of the map to make sure Mind the Gap don't go for Fire Giant, but he's ulting in. Don't you know they're all here?
And now he's locked down inside the cage, has the beads forced out as well, so Nika should be food here for the Mind the Gap squad. That will be the case. Quig stepping up on the Fenrir, gets the last bit of damage. So Mind the Gap, we're not out of this just yet. Who is it in the corner for the fighter? They're saying, hey, keep going. I'm not throwing in the towel just yet. As Mind the Gap keep fighting.
Yeah, the coach of Mind the Gap, making sure that they keep their head in the game. The light has not left their eyes.
Not at all.
And they've got 30 seconds that Nika isn't going to be available in this engagement. Griff, who's been left alone on an island for the entirety of the game, you only hit level 20 once. Vote's lead is about as big as it's going to get. Griff is catching up incredibly quickly, but Mind the Gap, with this gold deficit, can't feel confident stepping forward. And instead, Space Station with a disadvantage?
In a 4v5, Space Station are starting up the Fire Giant. These guys are absolutely nuts. They drop it though after baiting Mind the Gap in. There's the leap from Quig. Raffer's the first target. Then Wolves comes in for the slow one to everyone. Now Layers, but he doesn't have the cage just yet, so he jumps in and gets controlled, and Crimson loses the 1v1 to Cheerio. He needed backup there, and it did not show. But maybe Mind the Gap can win this one out. They have Dardez locked in. Where is the cage? Layers still doesn't have it yet. Now, the second it comes up, he drops it, and Dardez is in a whole heap of trouble. They have no Phantom, and his life gets claimed. Quig drops in the trade. Wolf gets a double, but Cheerio has the answer in return. 3 for 2 in a 4v5.
Able to find Dardez, so Space Station gonna show some respect here, but Wolves isolated, retreating onto the right side. Cheerio smells blood in the water.
Hey, we can both transform, and Wolves gets locked down, has no ult and no 72 transformations and Cheerio gets the kill. How about SSG? Absolutely stone cold, calling the Fire Giant 4v5.
Insane. And then afterward, we don't need Phantom. I don't care about this cage. 4 of us are in it. We'll fight you here. Space Station are looking very good right now, but mind the gap. Despite being 6,000 gold down, take that fight and they bring it to Space Station, and it looks so thin of a margin that Space Station win by. Dardes was able to get off one last heal to make sure that Cheerio remained alive in that engagement. Had that not happened, Mind the Gap might be the one collecting Fire Giant.
It'd be close, and the good news is Mind the Gap deny Fire Giant on the Dardes Invoke. There will be no sanguine play from SSG today, as they don't wait on their boys to respawn.
Man.
They secure it right away. Maybe goes to show how much respect Mind the Gap have earned in this one, as Space Station are not willing to risk it. They've got FG, though, to provide the sustain on all of their front line.
And that's a dirty front line, isn't it? Not only sustained from Fire Giant, but also the raw HP 5 that Jing Shen is afforded, as well as the healing from Dardes.
Yeah.
My man can take a tower shot indefinitely. He's not going to have to leave it at any point. Now, we get to talk about Mind the Gap's ability to defend. How are they going to look once Space Station tries to funnel in towards these Phoenixes or these tier 2s? And they've got much better tools this time around. Keep your eyes on Crimson. It's not only his job to clear out the waves, but he's going to be the one constantly putting out the poke.
A lot of the responsibility, I think, is going to fall to Crimson, because no one has the burst potential on Mind the Gap the way that he does. He's going to have to come up big and find damage onto a priority target. Raffer avoids the crush there, as it looks like the siege is on. Left side Phoenix is the target. And look at Raffer's build. He has that Emperor's armor. That means there'll be less shots coming from the tower. You already said it'd be easy to tank. It just got that much easier when they're looking to dive.
Raffer already splitting the map. Mind the Gap have to respect this split push. It looks like a 2-3 with Dardes acting as this hover, just making sure everyone's remaining topped off on HP. Mind the Gap going to be spread thin here.
Who do they send over to try and contend with Nika? Not an easy task. It looks like for now, that duty falls to Layers as he clears out the wave and keeps Nika at bay. Meanwhile, SSG, the other 4 members, are considering a push in left, but they've been pushed out as well. So Cheerio going to loop around and help out in mid. It's now a 3-2 split.
A slow roll here. Mind the Gap doing a fantastic job dealing with this aggression from Space Station. So far, both Phoenixes are remaining healthy.
Right now, Cheerio, though, is the one that's roaming between the two of them to try and serve as the one that can move up. Now it's a 3-man split over near the Phoenix, so they can move in, but the cage has locked them inside of it as well. Layers did good work to stall out their push, but Cheerio's been told that I am a monster, though. Just a bit off the mark. That's going to favor SSG.
Whoa.
Then comes Votes. Quig, incredibly low in the backline now, has to fall back. And that means Mind the Gap stalled them for a bit, but they need Quig to heal up.
They need him to heal up quickly as well, because they've got a portable fountain Space Station that is around this Aphrodite, and they're going to make use of this time.
Nika moves in first with the Eagles rally. Doesn't find the actual stun, but they've got a place to plant their flag as the mid-Phoenix is going to fall in the backline. But maybe Mind the Gap can find a bit of a punish. In come the snipes from Griff. That's putting out plenty of damage. But I don't know if Mind the Gap are going to be able to find a punish with this chase. That was so clean from Space Station.
They're still looking for it, though. They're walking pretty far out of the base. Space Station might be the ones springing the trap themselves. Dardes and Cheerio looking for the red buff, and the rest of the Mind the Gap might be willing to give them the fight.
It looks like they're still hovering around. SSG is still happy with this one. They're just heading over to Gold Tree. They're daring Mind the Gap to come in and fight. And Mind the Gap didn't find the look that they were looking for, but they managed to keep 2 Phoenixes up. They lose that middle Phoenix, but it was a slow burn, and they're starting to catch up just a bit in these items. Everyone still has their starter, though. Hunters, Guardian, Mages, all those are still there. But once they get those sold, they'll be on their way to catching up.
Mind the Gap do a fantastic job on that defense, Mitch. The fact that they were able to maintain 2 of their birds, especially in a situation where Space Station originally is going for that split push. The majority of them were actually working on that left-hand side. Mind the Gap, on the other hand, do a great job just deflecting it. Now, the reward is only the middle Phoenix goes down. That's one of the easier Phoenixes to defend, while simultaneously trying to put up a fight around this Fire Giant. And Mind the Gap are keeping that Fireman wave towards the center of the map.
I think that's good work by them to not let this wave creep up on them and cause problems when they have to come over and consider defending that Fire Giant. Is this a situation where Mind the Gap can't afford to defend fire, or are you kind of stuck back in your base waiting to play defense?
I think at this point, Mind the Gap, it is really just is a decision. What are we more comfortable doing? We've seen that they're capable of defending, so I think a soft defense around Fire Giant, you can evaluate it later on. I want them to show up, but I don't want them to show up too confident.
That's 5 sentry wards by SSG, by the way. Everybody's placed one for it to look like that over on the Fire Giant pit. So Mind the Gap will not be able to sneak in. They won't get any information. This is going to be a really tough defense for them if they're going to go for it. And it looks like maybe they're hedging their bets towards backing up. Fire Giant is streaking in as we speak from the sky, and then SSG can pull the trigger.
It's like Mind the Gap are very willing to put up a defense, but look at where Griff is. He's
Wow.
so far away. He might just be looking for the steal.
It's just Cheerio and Vote, and they're melting it. Erlong, Shen plus Apollo makes short work of the Fire Giant. Mind the Gap never get a chance to defend, but now they're in trouble. It's going to be a little bit harder for Space Station to safely split up with it being the 2 side lanes here. How do you expect SSG to approach?
Likely just a 5-man grouping, more than likely through the right side of the map as well, since they've already got that minion wave pushed up. Take a peek at that left side. They'd have to go all the way back to base if they want to work through there. But so far, Space Station has been doing such a good job of dealing with these Odin cages, utilizing the healing from Dardes. If it takes a long time to kill this bird, I think they're perfectly fine with it.
I like this, though. They still have Nika pushing up this wave in mid, so it's still going to be the 5-on-5, so they have to worry about Nika from such a tough position. He's already moved in and started bullying layers quite a bit. His Vote steps up, gets some damage. The Emperor's armor does its work. They are shredding this Phoenix. Someone has to get on Vote. It's not in time. He melts it quickly, and now Wolves is in some trouble in the back. They have to completely fall back here at this point and try and defend on the Titan. They only have 1 Phoenix left to rally under.
Wolves loses out on his beads there, and for not much in return, now he's going to play much safer in these engagements. He can't be that exact same front line. Luckily, still has the Somersault Cloud, so he should be able to sustain up at least a little bit in these fights, but someone's got to make sure that Vote isn't allowed to free cast on these Phoenixes.
They have upgraded Cursed Ankh, and they have the Odin Cage, so maybe they can make it work. There's the ultimate from Quake, but Nika's beads gets him out of it. But Quake's still battling. Wolves comes in to follow up, but Nika goes right for Crimson in the backline and forces all the damage out. Crimson gets deleted by Nika, but Nika's going to pay for it with his life. But no, Vote comes flying in, forces the retreat from Griff, who goes up to the sky. He's going to fall the second that he lands. He drops the Aegis, but doesn't have the HP pool. That means just 2 members standing, no 1, as Nika gets the double kill, and Space Station Gaming make quick work of Mind the Gap in game 2.
Make no mistake, Finch, that push was 100% Nika's work. Not only does he find the kills, but also he forces Layers to fully retreat from the Phoenix defense, use the cage on 1 member, and he still doesn't die. Space Station, man, they are looking so good.
This is top form from SSG right now, and if you are the rest of the team waiting, you're worried. Who's on the other side of the bracket with them? E-United and PK. I don't even know if you want to win. That's who you got waiting for you later on if they manage to beat Mind the Gap. They're only up 2-0 right now, so MTG can certainly still come back, but I don't know, man. SSG are playing really, really well right now.
They really are, but Mind the Gap is playing well as well, and we saw another adaptation there. They're finding ways to get involved earlier and earlier on. I think if Mind the Gap bring the same level of adaptation that they brought into Game 2, they could very easily find Game 3.
They got to have something else in the tank, though, if they want to keep this set going. Game number 3 going to be up right after the break.
Running full system diagnostics. Machine status fully operational. Operation Overkill.
Once again, Space Station Gaming come out on top of this one a little bit quicker this time around as they find themselves up 2-0 in the set. Gormizer along with Aggro one more time as we come forward. But of course, for those of you who are watching at home, you don't have to do it alone. Not only are you here with us, but you can jump into Discord and, well, hang out with other Smite fans, whether they're your friends, whether they're new friends. You can always come through. That's discord.gg, I believe, /Smite game that you're going to be able to join in on that one. There's also meet and greets going on. The pros that will be in there, I know Obey just had one a little bit ago, and I can actually confirm this time when I say it, there will be stuff with the developers.
Nice.
The design team, I believe, was queuing up some questions earlier. So a lot of fun stuff you can have in there. Plus, it's interactive. I know a lot of Titan Forger in there to be able to come through and talk to you about Smite as well as other things. I think there's bug reporting channels. The whole works. Everything in Discord that you could possibly imagine is going to be hanging out in there, except for Aggro, who's hanging out up here with me. I guess I'm also not there for you in the Discord just yet. And now we have to look at Space Station Gaming. They're up 2-0. I mean, Mind the Gap just hasn't been able to seal the deal.
No, and Space Station made that one look pretty easy, and it's no surprise whatever. Dardes gets Aphrodite. And for me, if I'm a team like Radiance, who might have to face Space Station down the line, like United or PK, who are certainly watching the set knowing that this is a team that they might have to play, if they can complete this sweep or just find their third victory at some point. I don't think I can give Afro to Dardes the rest of this tournament. I've seen enough, bro. I've seen enough. It's just absurd what he's able to do and keep everybody alive. This fight by Blue Buff was the very definition of a barn burner, and somehow no one dies. And you know who that's thanks to? That's thanks to Dardes, at least on Space Station's side. Raffer played so well in this game, and I think that he really made the difference in game number 1 in this set as well, in really just looking like a more impactful support than Quig. And that's not meant to be a shot at Quig. I mean, Raffer is a 2-time world champion. You're gonna be, you know, if there's a SMITE Hall of Fame, he's a SMITE Hall of Famer. That's not a shot at Quig. It's just that in this set, Raffer has been a really impactful support, and Quig has struggled to find his spots.
Especially, I mean, you get to the world stage, you see a guy that has 2 rings on the other side. You're a little nervous. I don't care what you're doing. You should be nervous about that. There's a reason he was able to get here. That Epsilon NRG team, a lot of people were giving credit. Like, mechanically talented all around, but Raffer's shot calling was a huge proponent of that, is what people were talking about. And here on SSG, you get to see a lot of that still coming through. I believe it was, the Epsilon at the time cognitive gaming set that like everyone holds in high esteem because it was so good between them. And there's a reason that Raffer has been able to stick around as long as he has and is still looking to try and get a good cement on this one, trying to go for that 3rd ring. Good stats all around. When your support is doing as much damage as the enemy mid laner, you know you're in a good position as SSG, and that's just what that game felt like. He
doubled layers damage in this game.
Yep.
Raffer doubled layers damage, and that's all you need to know. Look, it's another experiment by Mind the Gap. It's a theory that, hey, you know, maybe teams aren't prepared for Odin. No one else might be willing to play him. We are willing to play him. Maybe we can catch people off guard by taking something like this into the jungle for layers. Now you're 0 for 2 on those theories, and that's okay. Those types of things happen. In best of 5 series, you've got some slack to work with, but now Mind the Gap is at the very end of the rope. They have no more games left to give. If they've got a strategy that they really felt like was going to be better than everything else they were doing, that they only needed to pull out at the very end, maybe should have started the last game, but let's start it now at this point because you got nothing left to give.
And I have to give them some credit, right? We've seen them in a position like this before, Mind the Gap. Maybe not completely backs against the wall, but again, they get knocked down during the wild cards. They go through that loser's final and manage to find a win there. They're down a game because the winner's advantage that the other team had, and they were still able to come through and find 3 in a row. So it's not out of the question.
No.
It is just all up to what feels like this drafting phase. I mean, we had highlighted it, but looking at that Odin pick, it did not feel right. I mean, there were so many things about it that maybe could have fit a little bit better and maybe a different role. You had mentioned Wolves taking it, maybe even Quig taking it, but sending it into the jungle hasn't been that similar. And I think that's where SSG aren't that worried. Layers was the talk of the town coming into this, and we haven't gotten to see a whole ton of him.
I mean, he looked good on the Guan Yu in game 1. He really was impactful through the early to mid game there. It's just a pick that is going to fall off come late game. I mean, ask Ghost Gaming about it last year when Twig is on the Guan jungle and they're ahead all game, and then SK makes the incredible comeback, and a lot of it was because they have a Guan that doesn't scale that well into the late game out of the jungle role. So it's not too much of a surprise. What I am surprised about now, Gore, is that I am seeing 6 bans and none of them are Aphrodite. And now Mind the Gap is really almost forced in my mind to take it themselves. Getting Erlong is great. That feels really good. I'd be very happy with that if I were Mind the Gap. But if Space Station decides they feel like just blocking an Afro here for Dardes, it makes your life a whole lot harder.
I mean, you scoop up the Afro plus literally whatever you would want, and I can't imagine you're really upset about it. Yeah, the ROM that has been available. This Erlong, though, has been a big, well, just kindness to Layers. It has worked well with him, meshed well with him.
At it.
And that's something I think it's a bonus to get that away from Cherio, but doubly so when it's not just a pick away from Cherio. It's something that you know your team can do well. The downside now is Afro Xingqian. This is something we saw Raffer and Dardes kind of just straight up run at Mind the Gap with. They didn't care because they knew they wouldn't die.
Yeah, they didn't have to care. They really didn't. And you don't have that jungler real good pocket quite yet with this Aphrodite, but Dardes showed that he was able to really switch targets effectively, make sure that he was linked to the right target at all times. The fact that he saved Nika on that left side Phoenix dive that we saw in that one highlight was absurd, and just I don't know how you play around that oftentimes, to be honest with you. I like the Ymir on her, keeping those 2 locked in the duo lane, giving Quig something a little bit more traditional in that support role. I think he hasn't looked particularly impressive on that Fenrir quite yet, and you know that Ymir is going to have a good matchup up against the Aphrodite, at least in terms of those walls.
I'll call it this forever, but it's my 2012 kill lane. Like that, it's just the classic. I'll put up a wall, you stun them into it, and then we'll kill them. They're dead. I'll freeze them afterward. Like no matter what, you have really good setup. The downside is, like you said, even with that good matchup up against the Aphrodite, you still got to deal with the healing if you can't get back to her, and they weren't able to deal with her too often. The other way has been to match healing with healing. It doesn't seem like SSG are going to give them that option, though. Hell banned away here after they lock in that Heimdall. And this has been a pick. Admittedly, I will say Zapman has favored the most. I think the Knights lock in this Heimdall more than anybody else in the league. But this has been one that I kind of expected to see. Like, Jingwei, Heimdall were kind of our tier 3s after Rom and Cupid. And picking the Heimdall over the Rom is a little surprising to me.
A little bit, but I think it's just because of the Ymir. It's the fact that he can get over Ymir wall with a lot more ease than someone like Rom, who never can get over that Ymir wall without a Phantom on his side. So I think that with that Ymir pick in mind, Heim makes a little bit more sense. Also a better matchup against Erlong Shen because that Gallarhorn knockback prevents you from getting knocked up by the Erlong Shen 72 transformations. If you're fast enough with that ability, you can really take a lot of the damage away from Erlong because not only do you cancel the form, you knock him back, you prevent him from getting close to you. You don't take that damage. It's pretty significant burst even in turtle form. I like the Heimdall pick quite a bit here for Vote.
Well, it's safe, and granted what we've seen Zapman do with it, what we've seen Vote do with it in the past, it's also something to be really, really worried about. He can take his own moments and turn them into something spectacular. Double kills again, triple kills, that can happen out. You got to be on top of things with that gank, and like you said, he has enough to deal with Erlong that it's a little frightening if you're going over there. Joining Hell, though, it's going to be that Wukong on the other side, the Raven, the Serket, so a couple of shots over there towards Cherio. And realistically, with the Erlong gone, the Serket, the Raven going down, it does feel like he's going to have to reach a little deeper into his pockets here.
He went to the Nemesis game 1 in a sort of similar situation. Could go with it here again. It's another good pocket pick for the Amaterasu where you can end up getting a whole lot of extra healing and extra survivability courtesy of that. But Cherio's God Pool, I mean, he could go Kali in this spot if he wanted, and that's very difficult to deal with.
The last time this Amaterasu was locked in, I distinctly remember us having a conversation about the potential for it to go into the jungle, how it would be awesome if Cherio did that. But then we also had to come up with the fact that why are you going to take it away from the 100% win rate that Nika had at the time? Are you really going to try and fight that? And that has been a combo. I mean, this Aphrodite, we had mentioned, again, 100% win rate for SSG for a long time. Didn't end the phase that way, but held on to it for way longer than anybody has the right to. I think it was, 10 of her 20 games or something were played by Dardes, half of the games total, and he had won every single one of them up to that point. And then they started to fall down. The Amaterasu was very similar. This Thoth finally coming through for Crimson. This is the first time I think I've felt, at least on the other side, that Mind the Gap have the control that they've wanted.
It's not the early game mage that I think usually you'd want to see with a draft like we have with the Erlong Shen and the Ymir and the Anhur, 3 very early game slanted picks. Now you've got Thoth and Cthulhu, which are a little bit more team fight focused. But at the same time, these are comfort picks for these two guys. I mean, Crimp is a Thoth specialist.
Yeah.
I thought the dude was straight up cheating the first time I watched him play Thoth on a controller. He was that accurate with it. He wasn't, for the record. He's really just that good with that pick. I love this dodgy pick here for Cherio. It's something we don't see a lot of, but when we have seen it, it's usually based around non-CC immune ultimates. And you look in the mid 3v3, only Ymir has a CC immune ultimate available to him. This could force layers to go beads instead of blink early on, which would really hamper his initiation potential. Or you get a free punish on him every time you have that ultimate up. I think this dodgy pick, it's a lot more safety with help from the Aphrodite. It can get over the Ymir wall as long as she's got a jump target on the other side. I like this dodgy pick quite a bit for Cherio.
Something I think we've gotten more used to seeing adapting play than anybody else over there. It'll be fun to watch Cherio jump to it. Again, at this point, you expect a world-class jungler to be able to pick up whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and have a good performance with it. But it's the other side that I'm actually feeling a little bit better about at this point, which is that Mind the Gap, you get layers on this Erlong, which is a very, very comfortable pick for him. You have this Cthulhu, which has just been a strong pick all year. A couple of teams figured out how to deal with it, but I don't see a Nemesis, so it's definitely going to be a little more difficult. Plus that Thoth for Crimson just feels like it's something more at home. Is comfort enough to pull you back into this, or does this draft not quite mesh well enough otherwise?
I would say that the game 1's draft I liked a good amount for Mind the Gap, but I think this is still my favorite draft of theirs. It isn't as laser focused as I would have liked for early game aggression and trying to beat SSG before they get to their strongest point in the game. But this is a Mind the Gap roster that knows what they're comfortable with. This is a composition that can get off the ground really early and get to really early leads. Layers can just camp duo, and this duo lane can really snowball the game very effectively. The one lane I'd be a little bit worried about is the solo lane, because Wolves did do a really good job in Game 2 with help from the rest of the team, of course, on invading those blues at getting himself a level lead. I don't think I can see a world where Cthulhu can really do that as well as the Wukong does, but he's going to rotate into team fight to be so much better than he could be on just about any other pick, because Cthulhu's ultimate is just kind of that good. I like Mind the Gap's draft quite a bit. I think this might be my favorite of them.
It's definitely something to keep up with him. I didn't even cross my mind, though, that Dodge Elokin does mean that it is a Nika Amaterasu. Maybe not exactly something you expect to pop off against the Cthulhu in lane, but something you should be worried. Like, I'm looking at the Thoth, the Honor, and the Erlong. I'm a little scared if I'm over there, because I know that Dazzling Offensive is going to be a nice wide cone in these team fights. And Amaterasu, and specifically Nika when he plays her, it just feels like something different happens for SSG. I don't even know how to explain it. You just have to watch it to see it come to fruition.
It's a horrible matchup for Thoth. I hate playing it because she just has the mobility to catch you even with your very long dash. She can insta-kill you. You don't have any CC immunity. She's very hard to hit with your skill shots. I think that's a brutal matchup for Thoth in the mid lane, and Nika is arguably the best Amaterasu in the world. It's really between him and Yarkor on who's taking that title. I love his chances here to really prove it. I think that he is going to have a very good laning phase. It's a matchup that he should have plenty of practice against with Amaterasu versus Cthulhu. I think that SSG is, again, just trying to get into the late game. They don't have a lot of early here. They don't have the early game of the ROM to get them pressure in that duo lane like they've had in previous games. They don't have the Erlong Shen to guarantee you pressure in the 3v3 and mid like they had in Game 2. I think this is, despite Afro going to Dardes, which is unbelievably hard to beat, I think this is maybe the most exploitable draft we've seen from SSG so far. It has the most late game leaning with the least early game pressure alongside it.
And there's some safety to it that comes down. You know, Heimdall, relatively easy to get out. The Aphrodite, the healing that's going to be there. But like you said, something susceptible to them. This is the interesting thing. Both teams get comfort picks, but the question is whether or not Mind the Gap can turn it around now. We're going down to Finch and Mifflin. What could be the last time?
Very well could be, but Mind the Gap come in equipped this time to stand up to a strong task, like beating SSG. Layers on the Erlong Shen, Crimson on the Thoth. These are some comfort picks for the guys, but Mifflin isn't going to be enough. I think giving Dardes, Aphrodite, that's a near fatal mistake.
I mean, I haven't found an SPL team that's willing to do it, right? And this is twice in a row that Mind the Gap have let this one slide through. But, you know, we've talked about Dardes' Aphrodite enough. Let's talk about Nika's Amaterasu.
Right.
This pick is legacy. Like, this is exactly what you expect from him. He's so strong on it. He controls so much pressure. I think that he's absolutely going to pop off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how much has he proved it already, right? He knows that he's going to be able to make this pick work. He went on this multi-game streak with that pick once before where there were weeks and weeks in a row where Nika was like, leave me alone, I don't want to play this anymore, but they kept giving it to him at that point, so that's what they ended up doing. So that's what we're going to have to see if they can do it. That's what we're going to have to see from him, if he can make that pick work here at this point. It's something he's done before, so we'll see if it can work now.
I absolutely think he can. He's going to be fragging out from here on out. Now, I think Nika's going to need to play a little bit safe in this lane, especially considering how much early game aggression that Mind the Gap is capable of bringing here. Layers is going to be looking to exploit him heavily. Cthulhu, the second he takes the 5, is going to have so much aggression as Griff jumps in.
Griff has shown it all set long, hasn't he? He's not intimidated by SSG, man. He has been very, very willing to go all the way in, especially when he gets this on her pick. It lets him be aggressive, should give him a bit of an early game advantage as well, so we'll see if that can work out for him here in this game. Clearly not intimidated, though. My man's willing to jump in, and he's got the backup behind him with Quig on this Amir. I don't know about you, I'm kind of glad not to see Quig on Finware, so hopefully he can make it look a little bit better this time on the Amir.
And Ymir's looked good in general this weekend, hasn't he? Constantly finding aggression, and Griff doesn't care about the wave. Double freeze!
Two-man freeze, so Vote has to use the beads, but gets out of there. Was that a shell? Yes, it was. Both relics from the SSG dual lane used to get him out of there, but Quig clearly able to land the abilities, and Griff right there behind.
And now the Mind the Gap. I think this is the most confident I've seen them. What is that? Every single wave, Griff has jumped in, constantly looking for it. The smile on my face is uncontained, knowing that Mind the Gap truly are showing hearts of competitors here. 0-2 in the set, up against one of the best teams in the league, and they're still giving it 100%.
And how about every single game? They've come in with a different energy at the start of each one, haven't they? They had the aggression in game 1, they had the blue buff pressure, and now Crimson finding the kill on Dardez in mid. What a huge start for Mind the Gap. Getting to Dardez before he's got the Undying Love, before he has the itemization. That's exactly what Mind the Gap needed.
Game 2, Dardez didn't die until level 14. Now, 2.5 minutes in, he's feeling a little bit of pressure coming his way. Mind the Gap making some quick adaptations mid-set, finding pressure in every single lane. They do not want to go down without a fight.
And Griff jumping in again. There's the two-man freeze, and Griff gets the wall as well, but the Bifrost, such a strong tool in Heimdall's back pocket. That gets him out of danger, but boy, did they have the pressure in dual lane. They have the pressure now in mid. See if they can even get a Purple F invade, and this time they have to worry about a random Dardez rotation on Morgan or something like that.
They don't, but they do have to worry about just the fight itself, and maybe it's something that they want. Griff jumps in again.
I like this, man. There are a lot of people that react differently to pressure, and Griff gets aggressive. You can get your back against the wall and give up, or you can do what Griff's doing and get aggressive.
He's doing it so well, man. When Mind the Gap needed a hero, Griff put on his cape, and he's going in. Double dip on the purple buff. He wants more.
Dashi got guitar, right? We see him going in right now. Honor's here and ready to go as Griff is popping off here for him. We'll see if that's how he's going to keep up the pressure this game, or maybe SSG can rotate Cheerio over. How should we expect this Dodgy to play? Is this something you want to be aggressive with right when you're 5, or do you wait a couple levels and then start to get involved?
If you're able to find a sneaky ultimate, that would be nice, but Mind the
behind
Gap
him.
already worried about it. Cheerio going in.
And so there was the dash from Crimson, but is it going to get him far enough away to get the
What?
knockup? And the final judgment point, Blink gets 2, but Crimson is way too low. He's going to fall here. The damage from Cheerio, but that trade is so worth it. What's the big difference here? They're 4-1 from the start, and finding punishes.
Yeah, it's confidence, it's aggressive playstyle, and I think it's a little bit of what Aggro highlighted on the desk. This is the most weak early game draft we've seen from Spacestation, and Mind the Gap are looking to exploit it. I'm loving this playstyle.
This has been really, really impressive from these guys, man. I think there's a lot of reason to be a bit disheartened here in Game 3, right? To maybe not have the motivation you had before. We said it back on the desk. We've been saying it all day long. That is not this Mind the Gap team. You are never going to get this squad to give up. You're never going to get them to back down, and that's what we're seeing here in Game 3, man. A 4-1 start. This is finally the early game lead we said we needed.
And it's looking good for them. About 2,000 gold, 4 minutes into the game. Nika under pressure as well.
Yeah.
Mind the Gap are winning every single lane, and Spacestation can't rely on their jungler to bail them out. Every lane's drowning. Cheerio, there's only one of them.
Yeah, he's got to figure out where to go next. He tried to give him the gank there in mid, does get the kill at least on the Crimson, but it ends up being a 2-for-1, very favorable for Mind the Gap. And now Quig stepping up, getting the freeze off, and there's Griff with the Desert Fury, almost enough. But Vote knows he has that Bifrost, kept calm, didn't even use the beads again, and is able to make it out of trouble.
Yeah, fantastic play, man. But again, it's the early aggression from Mind the Gap. Now Vote's going to have to think twice before he steps up in that lane. He's got to play incredibly safe. He does have to use the beads there, unfortunately. So for the next 2 minutes, Rift's going to be jumping in. I mean, he was jumping in when he had the beads. Now he's going to be jumping in more.
This is a look back at Crimson earlier. I don't know if he knew the dodgy gank was coming or what, but he dashed up, gave himself the room, and maybe had another second to use Final Judgment, but it worked perfectly, gets them both low. He does fall, but they get the trade kill.
Man, Aggro said he was worried that this guy might be cheating, and he said he wasn't. Is he allowed to make that call?
Are we sure?
Yeah, Crimson finds the double-hoon, right? The collateral inside mid. Fantastic play to turn around what was a pretty good-looking fight for Spacestation.
Yeah, if you are not familiar with the console league, if you mostly follow the SPL, this is a great argument for why you watch everything, because when these guys come up, you knew locked in that Crimson was on one of his comfort picks with the Thoth, as we're seeing here, man. He knows how to pilot this pick, but I do think that he's not necessarily out of the woods yet. Cheerio is going to be a constant thorn in his side, and those beads for Crimson are going to be so critical.
But if we're going to talk about presence from junglers, we have to bring up layers as well. This Erlang Shen isn't on as much of a timer as this Daji. He's already ready to get involved, and it looks like he's going to be going into potentially the stone-cutting sword first up overall. 1-0-2 at 6 minutes means he's going to be hitting his power spikes a little bit more quickly than I imagine Spacestation would like. But keep your eyes on Erlang Shen for the near future.
Oh yeah, Layers is ready to get active. This is the pick that they took instead of what I thought they were going to do, which is the Aphrodite, right? So I think Layers has a lot of pressure on him to pop off with this if they prioritized it over what they knew for sure Dardes was going to take. So I think there's some pressure on him, but so far Layers is living up to it. As Raffer lurking in the jungle. Griff, though, seems aware of it. Steps up into Raffer. This is what I'm talking about. My man is absolutely not affected by this.
He isn't, because he knows Quig is circling around, looking for the freeze, whatever he can do, but it's not going to come through here. Quig, not in range. Instead, it's going to fizzle out ever so slightly, but take a peek at the focus from Mind the Gap, and Crimson already rotating over on the off chance that an engagement's going to start.
They should be able to use whichever way that he wants to go should be the call here for him. We'll see what the strat will be for him going forward. Right now, Cheerio and Dardes are hanging out here in mid. I'm looking at those two to kind of pick the pace up for SSG here a little bit, and maybe not vote right over there in that big matchup. So I think it's gonna have to be that middle lane stepping up for them just a little bit here, Miff. So we'll keep our eyes on how they respond to some of this pressure that's coming out.
Yeah, I think Dardes, for now, he's been stymied, right? He's been absolutely stymied. 0-2 already, as opposed to the 2-1 for Crimson. Thoth looking incredibly strong right now, about a half level, maybe a full level lead for Mind the Gap's mid laner. But I want to see this constant aggression. I want to see them leverage its lead while they have it. They need to be looking for red buff invades, purple buff invades, early gold furies, anything that they can on the map to fight into this early game. Because Space Station, sure, their early game is weak, but they make up for it in spades in late game presence.
Oh yeah, I think that you're gonna have such a hard time, right? You gave Dardes this
Wow.
Aphrodite, so you don't have a problem, but the freeze is there. Raffer able to make it out despite the trouble, though. But man, is it close. How much better has Quick looked on the Amir, as in the middle lane, Cheerio trying to find a way he can land the chains. I don't think he gets one, because Layers never has to use the beads. What a way to juke around. Am I seeing that right? All three missed?
All three missed there, man.
Wow.
Just good concentration from Layers, good juke shoes. Cheerio, not a god that I would associate with this guy. This is more of an adapting pick,
Sure.
so maybe experimenting a little bit with his dodgy early on in the tournament as Quig and Griff are going off.
Okay, here's the thing, man. I'm gonna be a little upset if we didn't see this Amir sooner. This is clearly what Quig needed to play. Why are they waiting till game 3 to show it to us? They look like a different duo lane, don't they? They're the aggressors. They're the ones forcing out relics, and Cheerio can't even come over here. He's been in mid all game.
Look, Mind the Gap clearly to me are playing for the storyline. They didn't want to win early on. They want the reverse sweep, and this duo lane has proven why.
Oh, good use of the relics there from Quig. He was in some trouble with Raffer nearby. Now they drop the spear. Now Raffer's in some trouble, but in comes Vote. What a play. Gets the knockup, and he sends Quig to the moon. As soon as he lands, that should be another kill. And SSG starting to catch up.
The upgraded shell early on, so detrimental to the aggression from Mind the Gap. A fantastic pickup from Raffer to make sure that fight swings in their favor, but even then, it wasn't easy. Mind the Gap played incredibly well. Griff in particular, when he uses the ultimate for CC immunity, just about every shot finds its way home into the chest of Vote.
That's a competitive duo lane. That looks like an SPL duo lane we've been seeing happen over there, back and forth from both. We were gassing up Mind the Gap. Maybe Raffer and Vote didn't like that so much, as they had to show us what they could do too. But this is the best we've seen Mind the Gap look all day long, and still, it's only about 1,000 gold. Myth, this has been good pressure. They got to make sure they're connecting that into buff invades, though, into ways to get a little bit of farm up on SSG, or it might be all for naught when this Aphrodite comes online.
The 2,000 gold lead from just a few moments ago has already dwindled slightly, now closer to 1,000 in favor of Mind the Gap. Experience completely evened out as well, but look at them. Looking for the aggression. Quig everywhere on the map, trying to find a freeze. Layers and Griff surging forward as well. We want them to look for aggression. They're searching.
Yeah, they are. They're moving up, but there's no purple buff up here. They do get that Alpha Harpies. That is something, but this is another bit of an issue for them. They got to make sure they're bringing all 4 guys up here when there is something to get if they win the eventual fight.
Yeah, agreed. If you just search for nothing when there's nothing to be found, you're just wasting time that could have been spent farming. Space Station was farming during that time. That's why this gold lead is starting to change. But Raffer, he's caught.
Yeah, this is what's been working for him all game long. Finding these freezes, punishing Raffer. Desert Fury use, even able to find the Whirlwind and Rage and Steel, but a little bit early from Griff. Off of that Impale, just the smallest miscalculation gets covered up when Crimson rotates in. 4 members in left. and Mind the Gap punish the support for SSG.
Man, we've been talking a lot about Griff. How did I forget that Crimson exists, man? He comes in, and when he catches his teammates slacking, he picks that up. He makes sure that kill finds the way home. Raph are going to be dead for the next 10 seconds. But what is Mind the Gap going to do with this pressure? It seems like they're maybe looking for a red buff as that's coming up on the respawn, or maybe Vote.
Vote's been very patient with the relics, finally ends up using the beads, knows there's no Desert Fury, so is able to make it out of there nice and easy. Meanwhile, Cheerio chasing, but a casual wall there from Quig separates Layers from trouble. I like the pressure now. Even though he didn't get that kill in Vote, he doesn't have the beats. He's vulnerable.
He doesn't now. Vote gonna have to play much safer in that lane, and in a lane that he's already had to play incredibly safe in, especially with Griff, the absolute mad lad, jumping in on every single wave. If this were a ranked game, your ADC would be complaining. Vote would be upset that Cheerio isn't there more often, but it's because Space Station's been stymied on the aggression every single time. It feels like, potentially for the first time this set, Mind the Gap's ahead everywhere.
Right, this is the best we've seen them look for sure, and we were a bit worried. I mean, Aggro said this was the best comp we'd seen from them all day on the desk, right? But maybe not quite as early oriented as we would have liked, with some of these picks certainly being better late. Thoth comes to mind in that regards, but Quig has done exactly what we needed from him. We were worried about Quig on Finra, and here he is completely flipping the script.
He's turning it around, and he's got a level lead for himself. Both supports elect to pick up Sovereignty in that first slot instead of the traditional Thebes, trying to make it a little bit quicker. It seems like Space Station has already recognized that the pace of this game is not the same as the last two. They want to get involved now.
Did you see this third item pickup for Dardas? We'll talk about it when this fight's over as Raffer puts a little bit of pressure here onto Griff, but rotating in his layer, so a good leap, trying to keep Raffer in position, and that means Layers can blink in, finds the top, but a better reaction from Raffer, and that's why he's one of the best supports we got.
But you wanted to talk about the Talisman of Energy.
Please.
I'll tell you why that got picked up. My man Dardes is scared of Crimson. This aggressive playstyle from Thoth has garnered respect from Space Station's mid laner, so he has to pick up the defense. It's not a bad item at all. The additional movement speed paired with the first ability, the Kiss from Aphrodite, means that Dardas should be zooming throughout these engagements, but it's not damage, it's not penetration, it's not the Doom Orb or something along those lines. That feels like a concession.
And don't forget, you can't ignore Quig's base damage on this Amir either, right? I think Dardas is playing a bit defensive. You might see a breastplate there, but Talisman of Energy is similar as this Fury is down to half health already. And there's 5 members of Mind the Gap here, but SSG don't have enough Mind the Gap to get the Fury, and this is what we're talking about, rotating everybody over. That was a plan 20 seconds ago from Mind the Gap, and we saw the benefits of that.
And now 2,200 gold. Experience remains even, but this early in the game, gold is what matters. Keep your eyes on the top of the screen if you want to figure out who's in a lead, and right now, it's Mind the Gap. They're in a very commanding position, but Space Station want to tear something back. Radford creating space, Cheerio on the Pyro, can't do it on his own.
Good work from Wolves rotating over. Even with Raffer in his space, he denies the Pyromancer to SSG, so that lead stays a lead in their favor. This is just such a different Mind the Gap than what we saw. I mean, they're still going for the early pressure, but it's really Quig, right? It's that he's been so much more successful than he was with the Finra, which was getting punished so much. This is making a big difference.
Yeah, this Ymir is a much better look for Mind the Gap. If I'm Quig, I said it in game 1, put Fenrir on the shelf. I think this is the best evidence we could have for that argument. Pyromancer, Cherry started it earlier, didn't work. Mind the Gap, yeah, that's theirs.
Yeah, they do not realize on SSG. If they do know, they're not trying to contest, because this Pyromancer goes for freedom, Mind the Gap, objective focus, fight focus to the objectives. That's what we're seeing here from the MTG, and it's absolutely working. Could this set possibly get dragged out further, Myth? I mean, certainly it could.
It really could, and it's looking like it might right now, but we still have to worry about the looming threat of Space Station's late game. 15 minutes in, that's not too bad. 10 more minutes, and you got to worry about Nika on Amaterasu, the signature Dardes Aphrodite. Vote scales in the late game. Cheerio as well. Mind the Gap are on a timer, but they're playing it well.
That is a great point. I don't see a world where Crimson gets to live in a team fight if Nika and Cheerio are after him. It's basically not going to happen. As Cheerio gets his beat forced by Griff. Another big play from the ADC of Mind the Gap. Absolutely showing up for him. I said it earlier, this has not usually been his role to be the one that's making stuff happen for the team. He kept himself even. He showed up when they needed him to and executed then. This is a different kind of Griff today.
This is Griff saying, I refuse to lose here. I'm not going down without finding a win. And he's looking as hard as he can for it now.
It ain't gonna
we
be
have
his
to worry.
fault.
Yeah, no. No one's laying the blame of this game on Griff. He's looking so good right now.
I love what we're seeing there from him. Quig looking for the wall with Cheerio just a bit off. But the red buff invade is the new goal. In comes Cheerio, and there is the pal out early. Undying Love coming out. Did he mean to put that on Rapper? I'm not sure, but I don't know if he or Cheerio needed it. Either way, Quig gets Rapper, and Cheerio falls right after another one for Griff, and Mind the Gap are right back in it.
You better think twice before you step to Crimson again, Cheerio. You lost 60% of your HP before you even closed the gap, and now Mind the Gap want the tier 2.
I love this objective focus mindset. Why did that fight happen? Over red buff. What do they do the second they win it? Tier 1, tier 2. They want more. Give me extra on the back of what I just earned and Mind the Gap. Now the proud owners of a 5k gold lead, 3,000 XP up. We haven't seen Mind the Gap in this position all day. Uncharted territory for the SOC reps, and now they got to show us what they can do with it.
Spacestation feeling that aggression as well. What do? We haven't been here yet. Usually by this point, Spacestation has the lead, but Mind the Gap looking so good right now, and this lead is only ballooning further. You already highlighted 5,000 gold in favor of the Order team. Where to go next? Gold Fury respawns in about a minute 30. They could spin their wheels for a little bit and then group up on the neutral objective.
And I wonder if Quig's thinking, I'm so tanky this game. What's the difference? I don't know, man. I bet it's the Amir, though. It's been such a better performance here from him to at least be on this active Guardian with early game presence. Unlike that Finn was supposed to have that same thing, but was getting blown up a little bit by SSG. They were ready to respond to it. This time, though, he's had excellent walls, excellent freezes, and his team has been there to follow up everybody in the positives with their KDA here at this point. And that's without the solo laners getting involved. Wolves has some pressure on him to make sure Nika can't save this.
I agree. Wolves has to do something on this side of the map, but keep in mind, Wolves is going to be rotating to these team fights as Cthulhu. Descent into Madness, one of the best team fight tools in the game, full stop. Take a peek at the pockets of Mind the Gap. Wards across the board.
Yeah,
Space Station can't return that favor. Gold advantage, Mind the Gap. Vision advantage, Mind the Gap. Gold Fury respawning, it's going to be Mind the Gap there first.
30 seconds until it spawns, and SSG just have vote in the vicinity for now. That's because a couple members back, so they'll be coming in reset. A potion picked up by Cheerio. Take a look at that. I think he understands how important this next engagement is. You don't often spend money mid-game on that.
You really don't, especially when you're so close to the Heartseeker. That's going to delay his build by so much. His burst potential going to be lost a lot. He's putting a lot of respect on this next engagement. Feels to me, that's a call you make as Space Station. If we lose this fight, it's going to be Mind the Gap's game to lose at that point, so they want to win here.
Wow, I wonder what is going in the minds of SSG right now. Is Mind the Gap secure both of those oracles and maintain the vision? It looks like SSG know. In fact, they're the ones on the Oni Fury first. Mind the Gap have got to respond, but they can't lose their cool. Fury down to half. Good wall to separate the fight, and now Rapper is in. Right behind him is Cheerio, and Crimson is the one under pressure. The dive is huge. He gets off the final judgment, but it doesn't hit anyone, and Crimson loses his life early on. Now Mind the Gap are down to the 4v5, and Griff is in trouble too. SSG just go right for the backline and punish Mind the Gap perfectly.
Overwhelming force is what we're looking at. Space Station, sick of the pace of this game, want to win the fight here. Nobody dead on the side of the Chaos team.
Man, we just saw frustration, possibly anger from the SSG team. You're not making us sweat before we move further into the tournament. So they came in ready in that fight. And the big difference maker for me was Nico was in that battle. He had more impact than Wolves. A complete dive onto the back line, and Griff and Crimson never got to play.
Nika and Cheerios locked eyes with Crimson like a Pokemon trainer and said, this is where we're taking this fight. And they absolutely blow him up. Beads, Aegis, it doesn't matter. You're going down. So is Fire Giant.
Man, this is a great game for Mind the Gap. It really was. But the thing is, you got to be perfect against SSG, and they just weren't in that last fight. Now Wolves, their only hope to defend this Fire Giant, and Cheerio is on the zone, Fire Giant low, and there's no one there to defend. SSG were behind all game long. Literally one team fight, and they're right back in it. They're ahead now.
And let that be an example to the fans at home, the mental prowess of these SPL teams. Space Station knows one mistake from these guys, we're back in it. That's what the pressure they play with every single week. That's the difference in experience between these two teams. What looked like was a nigh unsurmountable lead for Mind the Gap has turned into a pretty small, admittedly small lead for Space Station, backed by a 5-man Fire Giant.
Absolutely impressive what this SSG team has done here in this game, especially considering how well Mind the Gap played. The fact that it's impressive what SSG did is a credit to Mind the Gap, and now all of a sudden, and it must be disheartening, they're back on the back foot now. If they got to find a way to play some defense. This is close. I know it's FG, but you got to defend on some tier 2s here, right? You can't give up all that gold.
I think they are going to defend on the tier 2s, but there is a silver lining, Finch. Mind the gap. This draft, it's the best defense they've had all day. Cthulhu, Descent into Madness, Thoth, poke from a range, Quig with the wall. They have a lot of tools to keep Spacestation out, but they have to be there to do it. Spacestation walk in for free.
Yeah, they were not grouped to defend this mid tier 2. If that was the plan to defend it, they just weren't there for it, so I got to assume they just elected to give that one up. Now they'll go grab the tier 1 tower over in solo, start their push from there. So Mind the Gap, this is our best look yet at what their mentality is about this Fire Giant. If they're over there to defend, then they think they can still hold on.
Yeah, but so far, still slow on the grouping. If
Really
Spacestation
slow.
want to, they're going to get into this tier 2 for free. Look at where Quig's positioning. He's over there with layers in the jungle, trying to come in from the side.
That looks to be the plan, but I think that was spotted out. Nika comes in, so the follow-up is Wolves immediately into the whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Layers
Huge
is low as well,
ults!
but he gets out. But you're right, the ult was big, and Vote and Cheerio are both low. Griff lives, no one gets pulled in, and Crimson, Bullet, Cheerio, Mind the Gap are not done just yet. In goes Wolves, inside the Descent to Madness. Layers is there for a follow-up, and they want to keep right on pushing.
Wolf said, Nika who? Descent into Madness, knock up 3, knock up 4, Mind the Gap, surging forward.
But there's the answer back from SSG. Raffer takes care of Quig. Now the big frontline piece is missing. They no longer have Descent into Madness, and SSG rallying around Dardes can keep pushing up. They've got so much healing, and they've got the FG. Mind the Gap needs to get a little bit more off that push.
It's going to be slow healing though. Raffer's so low, and still Crimson can look for the aggression, but he loses his life instantly.
I don't think he realized Nika would just dive him. You can't stand that close to an Amaterasu, and he gets caught out, and right when Mind the Gap seemed to have a second wind, SSG snuffed it out. That is what the SPL do. They don't just take the dub, they rob you of the hope, man. And that's what's happening here.
There can be no true despair without hope. Bane said it best, and Griff's feeling it now. Raffer moving in, but good Aegis keeps him alive. The same can't be said of the Phoenix.
What a turnaround from Space Station, man. And this is them responding to the first adversity they faced all day, right? This is them saying, even when Mind the Gap shows us their best, we can handle, and that's what SSG has done so far. At least in this game, 8-8, 6,000 gold, just about separates the two squads. With that right side Phoenix down, Mind the Gap are in a really tough position. They can't afford to lose anymore.
They really can't. That right side Phoenix is not worst case scenario though.
Right.
They can still keep that wave pushed up and show presence on future Fire Giants, but Space Station uncharacteristically showing a bit of weakness. This is Space Station falling behind heavily in the early game with some of their most signature picks. The Aphrodite, the Amaterasu, the rest of the SPL, they're going to keep their head on a swivel, write some notes from this match.
They're recognizing SSG might have a little tiny bit of lapse in concentration. These are longer sets. These are best of 5s, and this has only gone to 3. It is tough to be focused that whole time. Mind the Gap considering a purple buff. I don't know if you call it an invade 24 minutes in, but they were going to the other side of the map. But SSG show up to defend.
Surprised that SSG has so many people over here. Fire Giant buff wearing off in just 8 seconds, but Quig, he's a little bit far forward. If anyone from SSG spots him out, he could very easily lose his life. Luckily, though, he's able to sneak out of there.
Why'd he stop channeling that back? Oh no!
Oh no!
Quig!
Oh
Have you
no!
chosen death? I hope not. Okay, back it on up, my man. He does use the wall. That'll prevent the damage from coming in. Quig uses the ult to avoid getting pulled in. Freezes Raffer underneath the tier 2 tower, but Cheerio has the pal out looking for a pull. He will get Quig, but that is all. Maybe Quig stayed to try and defend this tier 2, and so far it's working. Final Judgment hits Raffer. He ends up low. Desert Fury there as well, and SSG gonna have to back up without the FG.
Wolves putting in so much work in this Cthulhu ultimate. Raffer low, Cheerio low, Vote low, Mind the Gap not willing to chase, showing some discipline. They want to fall back. I think that might have been a missed opportunity. Now Space Station can freely go back to base and set up on fire.
Man, if I don't know that I really care what happens next. Mind the Gap are not free, man. They have absolutely fought here in this game and earned it up against the best of the best. He got in the SPL, man. I mean, sure they got outseeded, but this team has been second or first all year long, and Mind the Gap are holding their own. It's such an impressive performance, but I know these guys, man. They're not going to settle for that. That's not going to make them happy. These guys want to get a dub, but they're going to keep pushing.
No loss feels good, no matter how good you look during it. No one makes an example of that mentality like Layers out of the jungle. This guy cares about one thing, and it's the ring at the end of the year. He's not going to go down here without a fight, and it looks like Mind the Gap are going to be the first ones to fire.
Such an impressive effort here for the guys. They're going to try and burn Pyromancer quickly, and they've got a shot, but Nika's on the way, so is Dart as this could get punished. Good wall coming through and Mind the Gap defend, but how can they escape when Nika comes rushing in? Quiglo already getting melted by the pressure from Space Station Gaming. That one from outer space and sends him home. Mind the Gap now down one. Great pull coming out from SSG and Wolves now in the backline, but he'll take the opportunity to look for Tyrio. He pulled in his biggest threat, but Mind the Gap can't find any more. At least for now, his boat ends up sending Wolves on a trip.
Man, maybe next time don't pull in the Cthulhu. He almost takes away Cherio's life in exchange. But Space Station find a one for none there. Quig tries to look like Rongyu with the wall to convince that Pyromancer to go their way. It does, but at what cost? This life of your support.
Yeah, Quig had to die for it. So now it's a 6,000 gold lead, but this Fire Giant looks like it's not going to be contestable. Mind the Gap are retreating in the 5v4, and SSG will get the main prize. They got to keep on retreating. I don't know if they know Darvez and Nika are on the hunt. They should have saw them on that minion that just shot one at them. So Crimson should know, but it's too late. Nika's close. That is the Aegis force. Now he's stunned. And Crimson's life is such a valuable one to lose.
That's going to be a huge tool loss on this defense. Space Station, a full minute without having to worry about this Thoth, Frostbound Hammer, good hover. That's what does it, as well as the back off for the slow. Space Station is a power play now. Right side Phoenix low, left side Phoenix should be free. They're going to look to push as quick as possible.
And even if Crimson does get up in time, he won't have the Aegis. He will be in trouble if he ever returns. Space Station with a 3-2 split, 2 in mid, 3 in left, and Nika knows where he's going, into the back line to look for Griff. Good wall, though, keeps his ADC alive, but Rapper has grabbed both with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Meanwhile, the mid Phoenix has fallen. The right side has respawned as Layers use speeds to get away from Chirio's grasp, but they can't defend the left side Phoenix. The base is starting to crumble around Mind the Gap.
Layers, no beads available, can't move forward. Now Wolves uses the ultimate as well, but it's not going to get enough value.
It is, and Wolves is using it just to stay alive. He's having to fall back here at this point, as this game is starting to look closer and closer, like it is approaching its end. Mind the Gap. They've been fighting valiantly, Myth, but if they fall here, I don't know if they're okay to hear it.
Cross your I's and dot your T's, right? The opposite, though, because we're working on the last Phoenix Space Station, moving in. A lot of resources used by Mind the Gap. It's going to be a very hard defense, and Firemen and Waves already starting to work their way into the base.
They've got them coming in through mid. It won't be far before they're coming through left, and they're desperately trying to hold on to the right side Phoenix. No relics for Quig here at this point. No Aegis for Crimson as they look for the defensive. Griff is the target. Nika keeps right on moving, has the dazzling offensive, but Griff gets to the fountain and still alive, but they lost the right side Phoenix. If they're going to defend this, it's going to have to be done without a single bird at their backs. Tyrio gets rid of Layers. That's one more member that is fallen on the side of Mind the Gap. Griff right behind him, but Crimson does find one, but not before they lose Quig. Mind the Gap have 2 left to keep them in this tournament. Make it 1 as they lose Wolves as well. What can Crimson possibly do? He gets a double kill, gets rid of votes, but it's feeling like too little too late as the onslaught continues. But Titan is so low at this point. He's trying his most, but it is not enough. SSG 3-0, but it sure wasn't easy.
It sure wasn't. A lot of people would have said it should have been easier for a team as acclaimed as Space Station Gaming, but clearly this Mind the Gap roster has plenty of SPL level talent on it. I'm talking Griff, I'm talking Quig when he's not on Fenrir, and I'm talking Crimson. These guys look so good in Game 3.
They looked absolutely nuts, didn't they? Giving SSG a real run for their money. Now again, there are no consolation prize, there is no feel-good award, but hopefully we'll eventually get through to the boys. They look sure good here. Just was not enough. And SSG, how about them turning it on? I know this one was close, but they overcome a really good Mind the Gap team there at the end. So if you up against SSG, you got to look out. We'll break things down on the other side of this break.
Well, Mind the Gap have us going there, but unfortunately that trophy you see on screen, well, it's not going to get lifted by the open circuit team. SSG are the team that stays alive here. They finish it out in 3, maybe not something unexpected aggro, but something that does kind of catch us off guard in that game is that Mind the Gap looked completely different. I mean, it was a revitalized team that came in.
They looked unbelievable in that game, and that's the Mind the Gap that we were all hoping we would see during this whole set. That's exactly what we were asking for in their picks and bans. They felt like they were going to comfort picks, but they were early game leaning. They were able to group up and do things really well. Even when SSG all of a sudden started to look like SSG again, it wasn't like they rolled over and gave up. An impressive performance from this team, because to do that against a team that has been the top of the SPL all year long, these are bright futures for all 5 of these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be shocked if at least one, if not multiple members of this team weren't competing in the SPL on a regular basis next year. I think they're that good.
I mean, yeah, you have to watch this. Like, these plays that they were bringing out in the first 20 minutes or so were incredibly solid. Again, even though they weren't the team that won, they had so many awesome plays. Quig, I remember watching that wall and saying that nothing makes me happier than a good Ymir wall. It's just those moments that lined up. And unfortunately, it all came down to one fight. It happened to be this one that just fell apart.
And this is what SSG does. I mean, I was literally tweeting like, man, Mind the Gap is playing so well. This is exactly what I wanted to see. We knew that they could do something like this. And then it's like, oh, right, SSG. Like, it literally doesn't matter how far behind they are, because they are so good at team fighting as a unit. And they just don't let you make mistakes. You just can't make a single mistake against this team. Mind the Gap made very few in this game, and should be very proud of how they played in this Game 3 in particular. I know that these are guys who have high aspirations, who feel like they can do a lot, and frankly, they're right that they can play better than they did in Games 1 and 2 in particular, but I think they should be very proud of how they played here today up against a very, very difficult SSG team.
Yeah, I mean, 6-0-6 there for Nika, maybe not too far-fetched to think of when it's his Amaterasu, especially compared, or I should say partnered with Dardez's Aphrodite right behind it. And it is something that is insane. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter and in chat saying they would love to see Mind the Gap versus teams like E-United versus Obey, maybe even teams like Renegades, see what they could do in positions like that, because, I mean, this was phenomenal performance. Like, even though SSG got to choose their opponent here, it's almost easy to say they might have chosen the harder opponent. They still find the 3-0, but it seems like it was a little more difficult to get through than what Renegades had to face yesterday.
I agree. I think this Mind the Gap team is filled with talent and really found their identity a little bit too late in this set, which is the disappointing part. I mean, imagine how fun that set would have been if Game 3 Mind the Gap is what we saw from them Games 1 and 2 as well. It would have been really, really fun. Not that it wasn't as it was, but impressive stuff from them. Excited to see what these 5 players are going to do in the future. But for now, they have to take a back seat and watch the rest of the tournament.
Well, now SSG, as Mind the Gap is watching, move forward instead to face off against our, well, other team that we'll find out a little bit later. Match 4, that'll be the second one we watch today. United versus the Pittsburgh Knights. Whoever wins that will face Space Station Gaming. Tomorrow will be hi-rez Presents, and then those 2 teams will end up playing a little bit later. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday would be the remaining of the bracket. I don't know which side I would rather be on, but SSG and whoever wins match number 4, no matter what, you're fighting for the right to go up against Radiance, which so far, at least around playoffs time, that hasn't really been something you want to do.
Unless your name is Ghost, you don't want to see any part of Radiance in playoff time, because they have been absolutely stellar in those really, really important matches, and none more important than what's going to be happening this weekend. It doesn't get any easier from here is the thing. I mean, Space Station Gaming cannot afford, I really feel like, as much credit as Mind the Gap deserves for this early game, I think some of the blame needs to go at Space Station's feet. They drafted a composition that had zero pressure across the map, and you will not be able to get away with that against teams like PK, E-United, Radiance, whoever you find out on the other side. We've got to see Space Station tighten up those drafts a little bit.
Well, like you said, Mind the Gap, unfortunately for them, are going to have to now start watching at home. But they're not the only ones watching at home. I mean, everybody here now tuned in are going to be watching at home. And remember, you can use hashtag SWC at home to tell us how you are going to be watching. Here's Rach actually watching, and absolutely ecstatic, I'm certain, to watch E-United later. I would argue the #1 E-United fan potentially in the world.
No doubt
a nice
in my mind.
Ares helmet coming out over here as well, something that you can come through. And oh no, not the beads. Probably really happy to see the Ares played yesterday by Jake and knowing that that's going to come through. And then once again, we've been saying it, you want to go to Ponpon's Twitter because he has been dropping as many leaks as I'm sure he is actually allowed to. I'm certain he was given a number and allotment, and he had to get them all approved by everybody above him and beside him to make sure they could come through. But you want to make sure you're following him to make sure you find out what you could see a little bit more of tomorrow. But you don't want to disappear just yet. We're going to go to a quick break where you can grab your snacks, your drinks, but the halftime show is going to be coming up. We're going to start talking about E United and the Knights. We'll get to see them later, so stay tuned.